Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to foot.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Hello, dissidents. Welcome, one and all, to a Sunday evening edition of the Do Dissidents podcast. Keaton Weiss here with Russell Diver, of course.
Hello.
Pleasure to see you all this evening. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. 707 strong in the YouTube chat to start the evening. 642 strong over on Rumble. Thank you guys all very much for being here. Great to see you guys tonight. A lot of news to get to. A very, very tumultuous couple of days in the world.
Why?
Bashar al-Assad and Tuah have fallen. They have both fallen.
They have both fallen. And the
hold
same
your
way,
kids tight
too.
Tonight. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it has been quite the couple of days to endure here.
They both spit on that thing.
Yeah, they both spit on that thing. That's right. That's right. And so we want to thank you guys all for joining us. What a crowd here to start things off. Very rainy, very snowy week up here. It's actually a lot of snow up here. I think we've gotten more snow here in upstate New York in the past 2 weeks, really, since Thanksgiving, than we did all of last winter. We had almost no snow last winter, but a lot of snow these past couple days.
Yeah, it almost never snows in New York anymore. Like we have the climate that you would expect in like Virginia 30 years ago.
Right. So you've gotten really you guys have had no snow yet.
No, some rain.
Some rain? Yeah.
It's not cold enough for snow.
Yep. It is pretty cold up here. So we are doing the best we can. But we are without Jake tonight. Jake has the night off tonight, but we still have Jake's trusty app. Yes. And so Jake is out at an engagement. So he will not be with us. But we do have Q&A tonight on Rumble after the show. We do have one segment over on Rumble that we're going to do before the Q&A. So we hope you guys all join us over there. That'll be a lot of fun. But we have quite a lot to get to tonight. So why don't we jump right in? We're going to start off easy. We're going to start off with the least serious segment of the evening. But this is a fun one. Friends of the show, Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski. Morning, Joe.
Employees of the show at the rate they're going.
Yes, yeah, exactly. They're going to take Jake's job if he's not careful. If he doesn't stop slacking and start showing up.
I told you not to set him up with that matchmaker.
Yeah, right. Exactly. No good deed goes unpunished, right?
Yeah.
Morning Joe has a complete meltdown over the blowback from him visiting Trump at Mar-a-Lago. So, one rule of show business that kind of transcends all mediums, whether it's podcasting or television or comedy, is you don't go negative on the crowd, right? You don't want to go negative on the audience. Now, with comedy, sometimes if you do crowd work, there's a little roasting, that's understood, but you never want to actually go to a negative place on the audience and chide the audience in a serious way. But ratings are not good at MSNBC, and so Scarborough was pretty frustrated. And so he decided he would lecture the audience as to why it was a great thing that he went to Mar-a-Lago to kiss Trump's ring.
You can do two things at the same time. You can say he had fascist rhetoric and still go in and talk to him.
Yeah.
You know why I do that? To get the read of the man. You know why I went in and talked to Macron? To get the read of the man at a crucial time in EU funding. and NATO funding. You know why I went?
All right, I'm sorry. I just got to say, weren't they among the people who were hysterical about Tucker Carlson interviewing Putin?
I mean, I would imagine.
I mean, I fully agree that if you're, I mean, they're not journalists, so there's that. But I fully agree with the theory that if you're a journalist, you should be talking to anybody, and there should be no backlash for who you talk to.
Right.
That's true of politicians as well. Like it's a pretty recent idea that you're not allowed to talk to your enemies. You can only talk to your friends. That's an idea that's infected politics. But even more nonsensical, really, is in journalism. Your job is to report. You should be able to talk to anybody. But I don't think that's a principle they've generally run their show by.
To leaders in the Middle East who were angry at the United States, and I sat there and I listened to them attacking me personally for 45 minutes because of U.S. policy. You know why I do that? To get the read of the leader, to get the read of where the country's going. So I can come back here and talk to you and let you know what the hell is going on.
With context and
give you context, insight, and background. You know everybody we have on the show that's a reporter? It's what they do every day. They speak on background.
Okay, I mean, sure. I mean, this is what happens when you cultivate an audience that just can't handle that.
Right, yes. Yeah, you wanted them, you got them.
Right. You wanted them, you got them. Right. I mean, this is chickens coming home to roost. The strategy of otherizing Trump was never the smart move. The right way to oppose Donald Trump was always to oppose Donald Trump on policy. That's why the Democrats took the House back in the midterms. It's why they beat him in 2020. When they try and otherize him, when they try and paint the stakes as transcendent of what we consider to be political discourse, you lose. And now the hard lesson that the MSNBC audience has learned is that those norms and guardrails that you thought were so precious really aren't so precious. You know, we had so much to cover tonight that we didn't get to do the Obama Foundation speech, but Obama goes up at the Obama Foundation and he says, well, turns out democracy isn't really a priority for voters. Yeah, no shit. It's not a priority for voters. I could have told you that. It's not a priority for voters because voters hate democracy. It's not a priority for voters because democracy is supposed to be the means to an end, meaning the empowerment of ordinary people. When democracy does not...
They don't fetishize voting for its own sake.
Exactly. Not everybody is an aspiring Atlantic magazine columnist who has these high-minded theories about the virtues of the democratic system. You have to make that system work for people. When that system doesn't work for people, when people think democracy, they think health insurance CEOs denying care to people, killing them for profit. Well, that's when you have a breakdown in the system, as we learned this week, did we not? And the same goes for Trump, and the same goes for this just miserably failed strategy of otherizing Trump at MSNBC, and that has landed them where they are now, which is a failed network. And that's why the stakes were as existential as they were at MSNBC, because it wasn't existential for the country necessarily. It was existential for them. So The Independent reports viewers continue to bolt from Morning Joe amid fallout over hosts kissing the ring at Mar-a-Lago. So this is a relatively recent piece from just 4.5 days ago. MSNBC viewers continue to give Morning Joe the cold shoulder following the revelation that hosts Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski trekked to Mar-a-Lago to meet with President-elect Donald Trump. The precipitous ratings drop comes at the worst possible time for the morning talk show. On Wednesday, parent company Comcast announced that it was spinning off most of NBC Universal's cable channel lineup amid rampant cord cutting, including cable news networks MSNBC and CNBC. According to Nielsen, the 4-hour broadcast of Morning Joe drew only 680,000 total viewers on Tuesday, representing a 12% dip from Monday's airing. The program only averaged 86,000 viewers in the coveted advertising demographic of adults aged 25 to 54, also down 12% from the previous day. Now, you think about that. What does that tell you? The coveted demo, 25 to 54, because they are in their prime earning years, so they spend the most money. So the advertising, people watch those people watching. Only 86,000 out of that many hundreds of thousands. The audience is so old. It's so old. And it's dwindling. It's dwindling. Not as much, incidentally, though, as the primetime host, which we'll get to in a minute. Go ahead.
Even mid-size YouTube channels do better than that.
Yeah, better.
Like that is really with the resources that these cable channels have behind them to only have 80. And you can assume when you see a YouTube channel that has 150,000 views, the majority of those views are in that demo, just because of who watches these kinds of programs on YouTube.
Exactly. The online audience skews a lot younger than the cable TV audience, which means it's more precious to the advertisers, way more than MSNBC now. Compared to the average viewership for 2024, Morning Joe's total audience on Tuesday was down 38% and 37% in the key demo. Tuesday also represented the third lowest rated Morning Joe broadcast of the year. This further continues the slide that began the moment Scarborough and Brzezinski revealed on Monday that they had recently sat down with Trump to restart communications. The moment the husband and wife pair opened Monday's show by dramatically announcing they'd sought to mend fences with the incoming president after spending years describing him as a threat to democracy and a fascist, droves of MSNBC's devoted anti-Trump viewers flipped the channel. So in the middle of that broadcast, they lost people. They had people turn off. Yeah, in the middle of the show. That's it.
Yeah, that sounds like the resistance libs I know.
Exactly. While it's typical,
they met with Trump.
Yeah,
that's it. That's the remote.
While it's typical for the show to grow its audience throughout the morning, Morning Joe lost viewers immediately after the announcement. During the 6 a.m. block, the program averaged 839,000 total viewers and 113,000 in the 25 to 54 demo. The next hour, though, overall viewership dropped to 694,000 and sunk 38% in the demo. So that was the immediate aftermath of the announcement that they went to Mar-a-Lago. They have experienced a drop in ratings. Ironically, though, Joe and Mika have actually fared pretty well by comparison to the primetime host. The primetime hosts have actually done even worse. So Fox News reports MSNBC's Joy Reid loses roughly half her viewers since the election. Primetime hosts also struggle.
Well deserved.
Absolutely. MSNBC host Joy Reid and her primetime colleagues have faced a brutal decline in viewership since the election. The Readout has shed 47% of its total audience, averaging just 759,000 viewers after averaging 1.4 million viewers throughout 2024 leading up to Election Day, according to Nielsen Media Research. Reid lost even more viewers among the advertiser-coveted demographic 25 to 54 age group, losing a whopping 52% of them, now averaging only 76,000 key demo viewers. Reid's MSNBC primetime colleagues have also suffered devastating losses in viewership over the past month. The network's primetime lineup has lost a whopping 53% in total viewers, averaging at 621,000, and an astonishing 61% of viewers in the key demo, averaging 57,000. 57,000. Wow. I mean, we get between YouTube and Rumble close to 57,000 views per live stream now on average. When we're lucky enough to hit the Rumble homepage, we get more than that on Rumble alone. On Rumble alone, we get more than that when they feature us on the homepage. That is amazing. That is amazing. That's the average primetime viewership here. We don't have to read all of these here. Rachel Maddow went from 2.4 million to 1.4 million. She's lost 56% in the key demo, just 103,000. Chris Hayes, 56% of his key demo viewers. Jen Psaki, 61% of her key demo viewers. And this is the ultimate trend that you're looking at here. This was a Gallup study done in mid-October. Americans' trust in media remains at trend low. That's right. So Americans continue to register record low trust in the mass media, with 31% expressing a great deal or fair amount of confidence in the media to report the news fully, accurately and fairly, similar to last year's 32%. Americans' trust in the media, such as newspapers, television, and radio, first fell to 32% in 2016 and did so again last year. Funny how that works. The 2 years where trust in media sunk to a low are the 2 years that Trump won the presidency. How do you like that? For the third consecutive year, more U.S. adults have no trust at all in the media, 36%, than trusted a great deal or fair amount. Another 33% of Americans express not very much confidence. So we'll take a look at some of these trend lines. This is kind of fascinating. So this goes from 1972 to 2024. As you can see, just a huge drop overall in the percentage of people who trusted a great deal or a fair amount, from the low 70s in the mid 1970s now to the mid 30s. If you look at partisans' trust, and this is what we've been saying, we've been singing this tune the whole time, is that the reason why all of the meaningful energy on the left is and must be post-duopoly is because of this. I've said it is not simply the DNC. It's not simply the party bosses. It's not simply the donors. It's not even just the media. It's the voters who cannot break the habit of mainstream media consumption until perhaps now, which is what makes this kind of an exciting time. So look at the partisans' trust in the media. Look at how the Republicans' trust in the media just collapsed after 1998, which was the year of the Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky scandal, where they were gaslit into believing that there was really nothing to see there. And from there, look at that. A spike. It just plummeted and has remained very low since. The Democrats, as you can see, not that much change from a little over 70% trust in the media to 54 now. But if you look at this, look what happened in 2016 to Democrats' trust of mainstream media. 2016, it had reached a record low among Democrats. But then when Donald Trump won, what happened to that? They flocked to MSNBC. That was the golden years of MSNBC, was that first Trump term. If you look where it says 2016, about three quarters of the way across to the right, that's where it's reaching a record low for Democrats. And then Trump wins and it spikes. And that's why that resistance liberal media enjoyed a real golden age during Trump term 1. Looks like not the same is in store for them during Trump term 2. And
okay, well, I will say before you move on, I've watched that pretty closely. And yeah, even the libs are starting to catch on, because generally they have been around 70%.
Right.
Usually the polling on them is around 70%, which is about what it was for the general public before that collapse. And then there was this big split where the Democrats continued to trust the media as much as people did in the late 70s, while independents and Republicans caught on much more quickly. And even now with these numbers, over half of them have not figured it out yet. But it is starting to occur to them that listening to these narratives is not doing anything for them. You can see it post-election. Like, I'm going to cover the Supreme Court trans hearing, and I saw some people virtue signal about that. Not nearly what you would have seen if that case went to court 3 years ago.
Right.
Like, this is what I'm talking about when I say there's going to be a big cultural shift. Nobody likes to be a big fucking loser. Nobody likes to be shut out of power. Nobody likes to be ridiculed and mocked and marginalized. As much as these people like to claim marginalized identity, that was only through the bizarre logic of a very warped version of intersectionality in which there was this oppression Olympics going on, so that it became a way to achieve social status, claiming to be marginalized. They don't actually want to be marginalized. Once the cultural conversation has really moved on, as this election kind of signaled to them that it has, that's why you're not hearing very much of that. They're going to move on. The kind of whole business model that MSNBC represents, and I think the owners are catching on to that, but by their actions of spinning it off and talking about changing the name and reducing it to a well-funded startup, the whole thing is very quickly going to appear as a relic of the past. It feels that way already.
Yeah, well, as you can see there, I mean, a pretty big drop this year, down to 54. It was up in the mid 70s. It was basically as high as it had ever been on average until this year, where it's at a mere 54%. Now,
I wrote a couple of articles about that, about, you know, if you bought a car that blows up in the driveway every time you put the key in, people would stop buying it.
Right.
And the libs just kept buying it, no matter how many times they told, oh no, Hillary's gonna win in a rout. She might win Texas. They kept coming back. Their reaction to that whole collapse of the media was they all had to show you how they had just subscribed to the Washington Post and the New York Times, the same people who had completely misled them about the result of the election, to show you how committed they are to democracy and anti-Trump as an act of resistance. They were subscribing to the same people who had gotten it completely wrong. It seems like this election finally shattered that illusion that imbibing this infotainment is actually worth their time, because they're not getting any payoff.
Yeah, so these are the last graphic that I'll show you here, these three charts, which just shows you trust in various institutions. Now, the executive branch, obviously, this was taken while Joe Biden was in power, so you could basically take that as a favorability rating of sorts. It's not really much of a surprise that the Democrats would view the executive branch of the government more favorably with a Democrats in office. But even that being what it is, look at those charts. Look at how much closer the independent lines are to the red lines than they are to the Democrat lines. Like, look at how you could see how out of touch the Democratic Party is with the public with just these three chart lines here, because the independents are so much closer to the Republicans in terms of their view of these different institutions than the Democrats are. The only institution that the Democrats express less trust in than independents and Republicans, not surprisingly, the judicial branch, because it's a right-wing Supreme Court now. So that's as predictable as the Democrats' high approval of the executive under Joe Biden. But if you look at that, that really tells you just how out of touch they have gotten, that the independent line is so much closer to the red line than it is to theirs. And so it goes beyond trust in media. It's trust in all of these institutions. But I think the collapse of the liberal media, the collapse of the resistance media, the implosion of MSNBC is obviously a very, very positive thing. It's a completely necessary thing. And now that this has happened, you know, I kind of talked to Russell offline, as, you know, the show and the country, we're entering a new time now. We're entering a new era now. Part of what was so vexing and so infuriating about the libs is that they were an obstacle to building actual left power. And they were an obstacle to meaningful left resistance to an ascendant right. I consider them pretty much out of the way right now. They are more or less an irrelevant faction at this point. Now, there is a chance they make a comeback. There's a chance that Trump really blows this, and that provides an opportunity for these people to make a comeback. That is why it is incumbent upon us to make sure that that does not happen, that any resurgent left resurges, if you will, on our terms and not theirs. That is absolutely imperative, because as you can see now, the stakes are quite high. This second Trump term is going to hit very different from the first one. The world is a much more fragile and much more dangerous place than it was in 2016. And it wasn't a picnic blanket in 2016 either, but it's worse now, as you can see. And so there's going to have to be a real reckoning that happens on our terms, not on MSNBC's terms. This collapse in resistance liberal media was absolutely necessary for our work to mean something. And I feel like it means more now because of what we just said. Like, we get, on a lucky night, more viewers than on MSNBC, than primetime MSNBC hosts. We get more. We're a relatively small YouTube show. we get more viewers on a good night than MSNBC will. And so that's a good sign.
Yeah, I think that the Democratic Party, whatever it becomes, will not be that Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer party. It can't be. It just can't be. That's why they're talking about AOC, because they're trying to figure out how they can be the same party with a different wrapper.
Right.
But they are going to have to fundamentally change, and I think ultimately they will in a way that's akin in the end for anyone who's hoping for a big leftward change in the Democratic Party. What they're more likely to do is going to be akin to the New Democrats. They're going to get Trumpy.
Right.
They're going to look at the lay of the land. They're definitely going to listen to the Carvilles and such and drop a lot of the DEI, the LGBTQ plus. They're going to drop that from their rhetoric. That's going to be basically banished from the mainstream of the party. And economically, they're going to follow. It depends if what Trump does either works on the face of it or he gets lucky like Bill Clinton did and an economic boom for other reasons coincides with his presidency. Either way, because nobody gets into the weeds of why there was an economic boom during Clinton. They just think it was him, even now. And it was not. It happened to be he was president when the world was being wired for the internet. Anyone could have been president. There would have been an economic boom. But if you get an economic boom, they're gonna adopt these kind of libertarian small government economic policies. They're not going to turn around and adopt the Bernie Sanders model of government.
Right,
Absolutely no way.
No.
So that is a big part of why even now we're not saying, well, this is the opportunity to reform the Democrats. There is no such opportunity. The only thing you can do with the Democrats is destroy them.
Right. Right. And they are certainly on their way there. I just did some quick math while you were talking. So yeah, our last stream, which was a morning stream, which are not the highly rated ones, got 32,000 viewers overall between live viewers and repeat viewers. So what's the key demo for the average MSNBC primetime host? 57,000. So yeah, we're more than halfway there on a morning show.
On a morning
channel
show.
With 78,000 YouTube subs, 21,500.
With this, on Sunday night, our flagship show.
Yeah, this will probably beat them. Yeah, when all said and done. That's a good sign. A very good sign.
It's good
Indeed.
for us.
Good, yeah, especially for us. It's an especially good sign for us, which is nice that kind of works out. Okay, what do we got here? Lyndon McLeod, thank you for the 50 Canadian dollars. Let's have a cowbell for Lyndon. Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Says Slapshot vid was brilliant. Well, thank you, Lyndon.
Thank you. I've got like several ideas for the next one. I got to pick one.
All right.
Somebody requested that I do something about this cultural shift that's going to be akin to the Reagan years that I keep talking about.
That sounds like a bigger one than like a mini one.
Yeah, and that's also the good thing about that is anything that's going to be really long like that, you want it to have a long shelf life.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
And that would live for a while.
It would. Black Spock, thanks for the $10. How ironic that when the public tried to get their refunds from the airlines, the police came in on the side of the corporation, and now a criminal CEO gets so much sympathy from the popo and main media. There you go. Benjamin Franklin, thanks for the $20. New product idea, my friends. Bonus points if you can Yiddish this up for me. Masculinity is weak, TEA. For real male enhancement, you need to get Hebrew. There you go. It gets you stiffer than a wet yarmulke in a walk-in freezer. There you go. I like that. Hebrew and masculinity. I like that. That is good.
Not bad.
I dig that. JM, thanks for the $2 and the thumbs up. Appreciate that very much. David Santucci, thanks for the $20. It's very kind of you. Well, looks like they finally got their Islamic State. Yep, absolutely. Yep, the Empire scored a win today. No doubt about that. Michael Castillo, thanks for the $50. Let's get a cowbell and a sound drop from Michael. Thank you for that. Appreciate that, my friend. Michael says, I never miss a show. You two are dope AF. Although I wish Jenk's voice was a little louder over the background clutter. Facebook has ghosted all my posts.
Are you Jesus Christ, you loser?
There you go. Hit it one more time so there's no background noise.
Yeah.
Blasphemy against you? Who the hell are you? Are you Jesus Christ, you loser?
Yeah, Facebook
sorry,
is horrible.
sorry, I thought you were done.
No, that's okay. Yeah, no,
I had the
Facebook is
first
pretty
time.
horrible. Yeah, the censorship over there is quite awful. So I feel your pain, Michael. Thank you for that. Anthony Ringette, thanks for the $5. Joe should have been like Jon Snow and to treat with Mance Raider when things look darkest of all for the Night's Watch. Thank you, Anthony Ringette. Michael Castillo says, in terms of Jenk's voice,
Keaton did not understand a word of that.
No, I didn't. In terms of Jenk's voice, I meant my sound drop. I love your show. Yeah, no, I know what you meant, because sometimes we talk over it, but this time we got you a clean take of that, Michael. So thank you for that. Hillary Hinton says, if I ever win the lottery so I can give you fellas $50, I want Dennis Hopper from Apocalypse Now as my drop, saying, am I going to be the one who sets things straight? There you go. Thank you, Hillary Hinton.
When does he say that? Am I going to be the one who sets things straight? Dennis Hopper says that?
Hold on. Where is this here? Look at me. Wrong. Thank you, Hillary Hinton. Appreciate that. Sorry, we're without Jake, so I can copy that whole thing over.
I don't even remember him saying that in that movie.
From 1985 to 86, Corn Pop ran a trap above the Yona Schimmel Bakery unabated. There you go. Thank you, Abiding.
Nice reference. Nice reference. Yona Schimmels.
Yeah. Yep. Houston. Kenman G, everyone knows the war is over. Everyone knows the good guys lost. Thank you for that. Rust Cole and True Detective, how much easier it was to just let go. Thank you, Kenman. Appreciate that very much. All right. Why don't we go on to segment number 2? This is the Hawk Tuah tanks.
All right. This is perhaps the greatest late stage capitalism story I can imagine. I said to Keaton when I pitched him this, if in 100 years they want one story that explains the year 2024 and everything going on in it in just one meme, it would be this story.
This one.
All right. So Hawk Tuah girl, otherwise known as Haley Welsh, was just a random girl walking down the street who wound up getting asked a rather vulgar question, which she took in stride and ran with the ball or other parts.
Got it. What's one move in bed that makes a man go crazy every time?
Oh, you gotta give him that Hawk Tuah and spit on that thing. You get me?
I don't get you. I think you gotta demonstrate.
Hawk Tuah, spit on it. Spit on it.
And a star was born. A star was born. So much so that, oh, you know what? I don't think I put Bill Maher in here. All right, hold the segment. Go to
what do you mean?
We'll cut around it.
Yeah, all right. So you're gonna load the video in?
I'm gonna load the video in.
All right.
Read some super chats. We'll just cut this part out.
All right, we'll read some super chats. Happened. Yeah, it's all right. What do we got here? Hillary Hinton says, I was a rink rat when I was a kid, so fingers crossed that America's descent into dystopia ends in rollerball. I will James Gunn the fuck out of that situation. Thank you, Hillary Hinton. You know, speaking of James Gunn, my kids, we're showing my kids Elf now. Elf was a fun movie. That's like the last classic Christmas movie. You know, that's become a Christmas classic. And Home Alone they like too. I knew they would like Home Alone. I knew they would get a kick out of, the end with the bad guys getting the paint cans in the face and things like that. So yeah, that and Elf are the classics of the time. But yeah, no, James Caan is good in that. I love the scene where he has the pitch meeting. It was a very well acted scene. Thank you for that. Eric Rousseau, Team Snow Miser or Team Heat Miser? Which team are you, Snow Miser or Heat Miser?
I would have to say Heat Miser, right? You know what he's talking about, right?
No.
You never saw that when you were a kid, the Rankin Bass cartoon? You never saw that?
Yeah, which one is that?
I'm Mr. He Miser. He's
Oh,
Mr.
yeah, no, I don't
Snow.
remember that.
You don't remember that? You're
No.
like you're like Amish, man. It's
Yeah,
really
I don't
funny.
remember that.
Your parents didn't show you
I
that
know
shit when you were a
Rankin
kid?
Bass, but I don't remember that.
Yeah, but you remember like you saw like the Rudolph.
Yeah, the
Red-Nosed-
Rudolph one. Sure.
Yeah, it was one of theirs.
Yeah. No, I know. Yeah, I just don't remember. All right. What do? You have the video?
Yeah, we got it. Let me
All
see.
right, go ahead.
Where did it get put?
Michael Castillo. Oh, sorry, Mr. Fancy Pants.
I see what happened. It didn't take it in because I'm out of videos.
Oh, all right. Well, here, just delete the Hawktoa one
Yeah, there you go.
and put it in.
There you go. All right. Hang on.
Michael Castillo, in terms of Jink's voice, I meant my sound drop. Love your show. Thank you, Michael. Yes, got that one. Mr. Fancy Pants, thanks for the 1999, because I love Russell's lib impression. Well, thank you. That's very kind of you, Mr. Fancy Pants. Appreciate that very much.
Now
okay.
we got it.
All right. Very good. All right. Ready?
All right. So, coming back. All right. So, from that moment, she became the biggest thing on the internet. And surely a 21-year-old girl who gets famous for a fellatio joke is going to attract the attention of world-famous pervert Bill Maher, who here in a really weird, creepy, awkward Norman Batesy way pitches her on doing a show with him. And you just kind of feel like she's looking around for the exits here.
It already. No.
What you got?
You need to do a podcast. You do it right here on Club Random. If you do it my way, sex expert. And I'll tell you why. Wait. I'll tell you why. Because you need to, I told you were given this chip. You were given the chip of fame. Now you want to trade that in for something that uses that, but takes it to the next level. You have to trade on what you're already known for. That's the one thing you're known for. So you could do a podcast for I don't know if there's anything from somebody that age with that point of view, but it couldn't be frivolous. You have to take it seriously. Could you do that?
Possibly.
It's like Burt Reynolds and
Talk
Boogie
about
Nights.
sex, but seriously, serious issues, because there are a lot of really serious issues. I mean, there's
What's going to keep the people in the seats after they come?
one that's related to what made you famous.
Yep.
What am I going to say? You have no idea what I'm going to say.
I don't know. I don't know where this is going. I'm kind of
Okay, I'm going to
nervous.
tell you where it's going. You learned that thing about spitting from porn. That's where that came. What? You did. Maybe not directly, but trust me, the idea of spitting, first of all, it's gross. It's not necessary. It never existed.
French women have been spitting on cock since the Middle Ages, Bill.
Before porn. Do you know that? Do you realize that?
Yeah.
And porn is not benign. It is not. And it has warped the minds of the kids in your generation, especially the guys.
Yeah, they come up with some sick shit.
Yes.
People are just...
If they had laid off the porn, they would have turned out just like me, who after 52 years of smoking and drinking, I'm still such a lightweight that I sound like this after 13 minutes on the air. I mean, that's one thing. Second thing is, this guy's very proud of the fact that he never had kids. And I have to say, Bill Maher not having children is probably the best call he's ever made.
Yeah. That is probably the best decision he's made.
Listen, you got this chip. You got to cash in this chip. Imagine telling your child that.
The whole thing is so creepy and weird.
Yeah.
You got it's this 60-year-old guy pitching this 21-year-old girl.
Older than that now. He's like 70 now.
I think he was 68 when he did this, at least according to the tweet.
Closer to 70 than 68, whatever,
so I could make you a big star.
Yeah.
I'll make you a star. I'll make you part of my network, but you got to talk about that thing you got famous for. How about it, girly? It's just so fucking gross.
I know they are. People are fucking sickos. And, whatever
Yeah, those
float
people.
your arc. But
yeah,
Whatever floats your work.
Yeah, those people. Not like the old man pitching the child about doing a sex show under his media brand. So, but nonetheless, she decided there's too good a chance of Bill cornering her in a closet with his dick out if she tries to do a podcast with him. But it did plant a seed for her, so to speak. And she winds up signing for a podcast with Jake Paul, who, and this is what I mean when I say this story just brings all the late stage capitalism threads together. If you don't know who Jake Paul is kind of the boxing equivalent of Hawk Tuah Girl. He is a boxer who's famous for beating up old men for prizes and cash. He recently did that to Mike Tyson, to nobody's admiration. She gets her podcast, blasts off. She's behind only Joe Rogan for a while. Now, last I looked, I don't know if this is because she got a lot of backlash for what went on this week. Now she's down at 47. Still pretty good for someone who got famous for making a joke about spitting on dicks.
She should have interviewed
she
Kamala,
really can't complain. She's doing a lot better than we are.
Yeah.
Come on, you're a funny guy, Keaton. You can't come up with a spitting on dicks joke.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Fuck. Jesus. So the podcast did very well. Remember, all of this from the random girl on the street who made a sex joke. So this is her Twitter, and I just wanted to point out, when last we saw James O'Keefe, he was double teaming a woman well inebriated beyond the point of consent at a bar. Woman who worked in Chuck Schumer's office. Now, to be fair, it doesn't seem like. Yeah, he wasn't really trying to take her home, but his buddy sure was.
Yeah.
Now this week, what's the next natural progression from, random sex joke makes you famous to getting perved on by Bill Maher to getting signed by a meme boxer to having a hit podcast? Well, of course, she has to launch a meme coin.
My Hawk meme coin is live!
All right, we're gonna add that to the soundboard.
Yeah.
Okay, so her Hawk meme coin launched this week. And not everybody made the riches that they were expecting from it, but a lot of simps seem to toss way too much money into it. Like this guy.
What's up, Haley, Hawk Tuah Girl? So I just bought your token and I'm down about like $20,000 right now. I'll flip it around real quick. We can take a look at this chart. So as you can see right here, I bought the token here around like $500 million market cap. And right now it's sitting at like 70 mil. And so I was just wondering if I could get like a refund for this or like what the fuck is going on here, because I don't know, this isn't really looking the best.
That ain't how it works, kid.
Kind of bought because I thought that you were going to provide a lot of.
You got to spit on that thing.
And this bubble maps is the most egregious thing I've ever seen in my life. And so I was just.
All right. So we'll get into that. So this guy, who would think that throwing $20,000 at a coin based on someone who's famous for an oral sex joke wouldn't make you rich? Who could ever have seen this coming? So here's somebody else. I really lost $43,000 aping in Hawk Tuah coin. For those who are not familiar with the vernacular, aping comes out of the whole Wall Street bet GameStop thing from Planet of the Apes, apes together strong. So going all in kind of. This guy dumped $1.4 million worth of Moodang, another coin, for Hawk Ruga coin and lost it all. Swapped back the entire bag to 46K. Months of patience building stack gone in 15 minutes. Okay, so what he's basically saying here is a lot of these crypto traders started with small piles and just relentlessly studied the different coins, caught the right trends, months and months. He built this up. I assume he looked back at the person's record to come to that conclusion. And that's the thing with gambling, man. Eventually you lose. Eventually you lose. They looked at the finances of people who made all that GameStop money. Within a year, they had all lost it. Almost all of them had given all that money back. That's why the house always wins, right? Sooner or later, you're going to do something stupid. So people were not very happy about this. Hawk Tuah, insider trade on that thing. This is from New York Magazine. Hawk Tuah girl, real name Haley Welsh, is embroiled in crypto controversy after launching a meme currency, Hawk, on December 4th via the Solana blockchain, per the Independent. After launch, the coin rode Ms. Tuah's public profile to sky-high heights, surging to 900% of its original value and reaching a market cap of $490 million per Crypto Times. Within hours, it crashed 91%. See, this is FOMO, fear of missing out. You see it going up, and then everyone goes in. It's like musical chairs. You can make a fortune this way, but you don't want to be the last one sitting there when the lights go out. The rise and fall of a Southern Princess's meme coin was that's a play on friend of show Chapel Roan's album name. Was attributed to insider wallets and snipers who controlled 80 to 90% of the coin at launch. These groups buy a bunch of coin, wait for it to reach peak publicity, perhaps after being endorsed by a viral personality, then sell immediately. The old pump and dump scheme, otherwise known as a rug pull. So obviously she got a lot of very negative publicity here. So she tried to get that under control. Here she says, copy and pasting, Hawkonomics, team hasn't sold one token, and not one KOL was given one free token. We tried to stop snipers as best we could through high fees in the start of launch. Fees have now been dropped. Apparently, the fees were also very high by industry standards at 15%. So now she got reader noted on this. The team and insiders have actually been selling their tokens since launch. A majority have never purchased anything and have only sold the tokens they were given. Haley is lying and will likely have to talk to a judge about this. Those community notes wags. Okay, so you have a lot of people who have been throwing up evidence of insider selling. Token insiders kept over 97% of the supply and are actively selling. And there's another one sarcastically saying the team hasn't sold one token and showing the tokens that the team actually did sell. Hawk didn't disappoint. 96% of the supply in one cluster. Nice. Now, this shows evidence of coordination by this pattern of cluster selling like this. So now this fella, who's featured here in a Rolling Stone article, meet the YouTube creator busting crypto scams. As CoffeeZilla, Stephen Findelson has made it his mission to unravel crypto schemes before investors lose their shirts. This is probably the funniest spaces since the Trump Elon one.
I would even say since the Ron DeSantis Elon one, the fake launch one. Yeah,
this one is pretty freaking funny. So CoffeeZilla goes in there and just rips them a new one. All right, so let's listen.
One of the most miserable, horrible launches I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, then why the fuck are you on?
I've been tracing it on chain for a while. You guys generated over $1 million in fees while y'all's fans got rug pulled. There was snipers, but there was also insider trading directly linked to y'all's creator account. What are you guys doing?
No. That's not true.
That is true. That's a fact.
It's not.
Well, it's a fact, and you can see it on chain. So
Yeah, we know. We trust me. We were there. We could answer that.
You know about the insider trading?
No, there's no insider trading. That's why we can answer it.
Okay, so there's tokens going directly from the main account.
Coffeezilla, just chill for a second.
And then it's getting sold for 50K. Who is that?
Definitely not us. You think we're doing this for 50K? Yeah, fucking right. Talking to the wrong guy. You're used to these bullshit scammers out here. Not us.
These are the real scammers.
You know what they say? There's a spitter born every minute.
Now we had.
That's what everyone says, by the way.
Listen. Doesn't matter. No, I'm not everyone. There was a strategic allocation, right, through a foundation. Every single one of those was signed through a SAFT. The deployer wallet. You've heard of a strategic allocation or a private
How much
sale?
did y'all get doing a pre-sale? How much did y'all make?
It's not that
selling
we
out
made.
your fans.
You mean the fake blowjob money turned out to be worthless?
Pill, brother.
Who could have seen that coming?
No, there's no rug. We're here every single day. There's no
You're
rug
better
pull.
off using actual blowjobs as a currency. Blowjobs don't fall out of favor like fake
oldest
currency.
profession.
Yeah, it's the oldest profession. If you want to sell a pair of shoes, hey, I'll give you a blowjob for your pair of shoes. That's an honest transaction. Nobody's fewer people are gonna turn you down if you offer them a blowjob for their shoes than if you offer them a Tuah meme coin for your shoes. People are gonna say, "What the hell is that?"
It's kind of amazing that you would have, and okay, like I said, a lot of these people were just trying to play the momentum. They were just trying to get in, get out quick, and make a profit. If you don't time that perfectly, you're fucked.
Right. It's like
because when these things go down, when they go down faster than Haley Welch.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Just like any trend. Yeah.
they just boom within seconds. You could be down tens of thousands of dollars. The guy who was sophisticated enough to build up 1.4. I don't know what that cap. Well, I mean, I do know what he was thinking. He built up all that money and he thought he was bulletproof.
Right.
By us. Yes, snipers sniped it up to an insane market cap.
No, it's not just snipers.
That was not us.
That was listen. You know that.
Listen, no. I'm telling you the truth.
And y'all made millions on fees from this little scheme.
There's not a.
I'm sure that's not you getting those fees, right? Who's making the money on the fees? Who's making millions of dollars on fees from this rug pull?
That's not a scheme. That's the project. So we can keep this thing going for years. Okay. That's how do you think? There's so many expenses.
Who makes the money on the fees?
And the way they talk about it, like they're building a utopia.
Right, exactly.
We want to keep this going for years for the Hawk Tuah community, for the community built around the woman who's only famous because she made a sex joke.
They're acting like this is like a reputable industry to begin with.
Right, and then he goes on to really, this is the clincher. When you want to convince people you're not running a scam, the words Cayman Islands should never leave your lips.
Right.
Someone just made over $1 million on fees. Who made it?
First of all, the fees were there with Meteora pools, and that goes to the creator, right?
Who does that who does that belong to?
That belongs to the project, right?
Who's the project? Who is the project?
Well, the project is over here, Haley Welch, right? And
how much does Haley Welch own?
This is Haley Welch's project.
So she owns all of it.
Coffeezilla.
Did she just make $1 million on fees on a rug pull?
Do you know how much it costs for lawyer fees to create a foundation in the Cayman Islands to hire directors? You think this stuff pays for itself, right?
All right, so you get the idea. Just absolutely ridiculous. So here's somebody who filed a complaint with the SEC. I'm sure not the last. Just filed my report against Haley Welch and Hawk Team for rugging investors. Here's the link below to file a complaint. Of course, you got some ambulance chasers getting in on the act. If you lost money on Hawk, contact our firm to learn about your legal rights. Our firm represents thousands of NFT and token investors in securities matters. This is attorney advertising. And finally, things come full circle. Somebody decided to pick up on the trend of the backlash against the meme coin, against the girl who got famous for the blowjob joke, joking about sending the blowjob girl who did the rug pull meme coin offering to prison called Tuah, as in straight Tuah prison, with their aim being to take revenge against her by getting the market cap above the original Hawk coin. Now, if this is not some late stage capitalism shit where the money is based on absolutely nothing of value, it's all just built around decadence and fantasy and digital nonsense, that you can't do better than this story. This is everything Marx predicted late stage capitalism would be like, and more so.
Yeah. I mean, and, I have to say, like, the real scumbag in all of this is whoever pitched this to her. You know what I mean? Because she was clearly...
clearly she's not the mastermind here.
Yeah, she's not the mastermind. She probably has a business manager who took a meeting with a guy who said, hey, this would be a great idea. And she just doesn't have the wherewithal to ask, hey, what is this really about? I mean, she's young, obviously. I mean, she's an adult, but she's very young.
She's literally someone who got pulled off the street and made extremely famous within less than a year?
Right.
Because she made a sex joke.
Yeah, so she's not like a scheming. I think, she's too young to know to have her eyes open when somebody comes to you with an idea and says we're going to make a lot of money.
To be fair, she got greedy too.
You have
Come
to
on,
ask,
man.
You have to ask why. You have to ask, well, what is this? You have to be able to say, okay, well, actually, what is the downside to this? What are the risks to this? What exactly we're doing here? And it sounds to me like she just did not have the wherewithal to do any of that. She just trusted the people around her, and here she is.
Sure. To be fair, though, she's clearly partly just general. Yeah, people can grab you and try to make you famous off a sex joke. Doesn't mean you can pull it off. So she has to have a certain sophistication. She calls herself the queen of memes. She clearly understands the online world to a certain extent.
She's good. I mean, she has a charisma. She's got a sense of humor.
Yeah.
She's funny. Like she's good. From what I've seen.
She plays her type
good.
well.
Yeah.
She's got a good instinct for like what it is about her, what shtick people want her to do. Oh yeah, I'm the country girl. And, she's figured that out, and she's parlayed it. So if you're smart enough to do that, you're smart enough to be like, she knows there are a lot of meme coin scams, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, like I said, yeah, I think
ask some questions.
Yeah. It was a situation where just didn't ask any questions, just kind of got led along. And, I do say in her defense, it's easy to get led along by people when you're that young. As Bill Maher said,
sure,
you should do this is your tip. You got to cash in. You know what I mean? Like,
hey, girlie, this is your big chance. Come along with me.
Right,
you
exactly.
won't regret it.
When you got people saying that to you, it's not inconceivable that you would just at a certain point say, yeah, I guess I trust these people who are saying they're going to make us a ton of money and it's going to be a big hit. Why not? When you're dealing with something like this and you're talking about people's investments, that is a bit negligent on her part, for sure.
Yeah, I don't think the way to go is to vilify her. I think the story is interesting on what it says about where we are as a society, as an economy. You got people freezing in tents in North Carolina, and this is what we as a society elevate.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the whole thing, not just making her famous, and this whole meme coin thing. How decadent does your society have to be to even generate such an idea?
Right.
For people to have that much disposable income, that
right.
Could
they could
be
just
a
like
thing.
It would never occur to me to put money in one of these things. The thought would never cross my mind. Like, not only would I never do it, I would never think to do. I would never contemplate for a second to invest $1 in a meme coin. I don't even know what it is. Like I'm so uninterested. We don't even stream to Rockfin.
A
right?
meme coin
That's how little we know or care about any of this crypto stuff. We won't even live stream to Rockfin because when someone gives us $5, we don't know how to take it out and how much that $5 is going to be worth the next day.
We're like,
so we're like, fuck it. Rumble gives us cash money. Rumble wins.
Cash is king.
Exactly.
Well, no. Actually, I saved an article. Maybe we'll do it at some point. That was talking about how all of these investments that really attract young men are booming, like crypto, since Trump won. And I think an element of this. So a meme coin is literally this. It's a coin that's created to catch a meme.
Right.
So something is trendy. Someone builds a coin around that, like what they did with the banana that we covered a couple weeks ago. It's a meme. It's out there. There's a Pepe coin for that meme.
Right.
It's that. I think partly it is because we don't live in a time where a lot of these people feel like, well, I'm going to go and I'm going to start a business. I'm going to open a hardware store. I'm going to save some money. I'm going to buy a house. So they wind up degenerate gamblers. That's what all this is. You go to a casino to try to get rich when you don't think you can do it through hard work and entrepreneurism. You're talking about a generation that doesn't see that as a viable path, but they don't want to just resign themselves to always being a regular schmuck. So you gamble. That's what this is. It's gambling.
Exactly. All right. We got 2236 in the YouTube channel. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Hit that like button, please. Hit that subscribe button, please, over on YouTube. Hit that follow button on Rumble. 1,400 of you fine folks over there. Michael Castillo, once again, for another $50. Here, let me hit this right now.
Blasphemy against you? Who the hell are you? Are you Jesus Christ, you loser?
Michael, thank you for the generous donation. Says, what's the point of fighting for something if you're not willing to die for it in the first place? I truly love you, gentlemen. Love you back, Michael. Thank you very much for the kind words. Snork Y2K for $5 says the Clinton economic boom was people getting paid to move MFG to Mexico and buying things from U.S. to build in Mexico, and those products are gone now. Thank you, Snork. Fun Bad, thanks for the $2, says your best videos are you trashing Marianne 24. There we go. Yeah, those were some good ones. Those were fun times. Simpler times, but fun times.
Simpler times. We don't do those kinds of videos very much anymore.
Not much.
But partly it's a different point in the news cycle. And partly the look at what the stupid person said about the stupid person.
Right.
Those can be fun, but there's just too much serious stuff to cover. Like blowjob queens launching
like
meme coins. Yeah.
Exactly. Alex Das Lieb, thanks for the $9.99. Y'all were theater nerds, no? Yes. Anthem Blue Cross decided to cover Anesthesia on December 5th. See that? Wonder why. Yeah. Wonder why.
Yeah, we're covering that on the other side.
That thing over there, that thing that happened that day.
Slipped on a banana peel.
Yeah, exactly. Kuznetsky Bassane, thanks for the $9.99. Appreciate that very much. Ryan Spence, thanks for the $2. Klaus and Rise of the Guardians are good Christmas movies. Thank you. Mark Pugliese, Russ, how do I get that shirt you're wearing? Oh, did the Zago brothers sell that, or did they just give that to you?
They just gave it to us. Like we all told them you can make a fortune selling these. We should reach out. We should reach out to them again.
Yeah,
especially it's Christmas if they make these available.
Yeah, they should. Our merch store never linked to our YouTube properly. I'm gonna have to reach out to Nick and see how they linked that, because it says it should be linked right now, but it's not. But if you want to get some Do Dissidents merch, you just go to dodissidents.com/store. I think Jake made that up. Did he make that up? Yeah, I'll put that as a link now. We'll feature it later in the show. Here, merch, that'll work too. All right, let's scroll up here. Okay. Okay. The problem with cultural collapse, says Ken Minji, is that Barry Weiss and the dark web will become more empowered. I don't see a positive future. Why would she get more empowered?
Well, because they're saying that they're going to become the dominant cultural force. I don't know about that. We're gonna, when we cover the CEO on the other side, part of our coverage is going to be the backlash those guys have been getting for trying to make this a woke thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. You're woke. Well, we'll talk about it over there.
A bunch of fucking losers. Anyway, Eric, so Rachel will have to switch to OnlyFans doing Russiagate fantasies for rich shit lives. Yeah, there you go. That'd be funny. Thank you. Right. Okay, why don't we move on? All right, so folks, this is a big one. So buckle up here. Big news, obviously, in Syria. So as a rule, folks, when you see something like this happen, you know stuff is going down. Does this ring a bell? And when you see a statue of a Middle Eastern dictator coming down, you know things just got serious. Things just got real, right? That is a statue of Bashar al-Assad, brought down as regime's 53-year grip on power comes to an end. Syrian rebels topple President Assad. Prime Minister calls for free elections. Reuters had the reporting. Now, it's inevitable, folks, that as we do this, some of this is going to be a tad obsolete as things are moving very, very quickly. There's probably stuff breaking right now that we're not seeing, but we are doing the best we can here. Syrian rebels declared Bashar al-Assad's ouster after seizing control of Damascus on Sunday, ending his family's iron-fisted rule after more than 13 years of civil war in a seismic moment for the Middle East. The Islamist rebels also dealt a major blow to the influence of Russia and Iran in the region, key allies who propped up Assad during critical moments in the conflict. Iran's embassy was stormed by Syrian rebels following their capture of Damascus, Iran's English-language press TV reported on Sunday. Assad, who had crushed all forms of dissent, flew out of Damascus for an unknown destination earlier on Sunday, two senior army officers told Reuters, as rebels said they had entered the capital with no sign of army deployments. We celebrate with the Syrian people the news of freeing our prisoners and releasing their chains and announcing the end of the era of injustice in Sednaya prison, the rebels said, referring to a large jail on the outskirts of Damascus where the Syrian government detained thousands. The Syrian rebel coalition said on Sunday it is continuing to work to complete the transfer of power in Syria to a transitional governing body with full executive powers. The Great Syrian Revolution has moved from the stage of struggle to overthrow the Assad regime to the struggle to build a Syria together that befits the sacrifices of its people, it added in a statement. The collapse followed a shift in the balance of power in the Middle East after many leaders of Lebanon's Iranian-backed Hezbollah group, a linchpin of Assad's battlefield force, were killed by Israel over the past 2 months. Russia, Assad's other key ally, has been focused on the war in Ukraine. So it starts making even more sense now, does it not? Talk about 4D chess, right? Hotspot puts out this video here. Benjamin Netanyahu wastes no time celebrating the toppling of the Assad regime. Here he is from occupied Syrian territory, ready to go on location with this video. A historic day for the Middle East, he says.
Historic day for the Middle East. The collapse of the Assad regime, the tyranny in Damascus, offers great opportunity, but also is fraught with significant dangers. This collapse is a direct result of our forceful action against Hezbollah and Iran, Assad's main supporters. It set off a chain reaction of all those who want to free themselves from this tyranny and its suppression. But it also means we have to take action against possible threats. One of them is the collapse of the Separation of Forces Agreement from 1974 between Israel and Syria. This agreement held for 50 years. Last night it collapsed. The Syrian army abandoned its positions. We gave the Israeli army the order to take over these positions to ensure that no hostile force embeds itself right next to the border of Israel. This is a temporary defensive position until a suitable arrangement is found.
Oh, sure it is.
Equally, we send a hand of peace
you guys are known
to
for
all
giving
those
back
beyond
land.
our border in Syria.
You're famous
to the Jews, to the Kurds, to the Christians, and to the Muslims who want to live in peace with Israel. We're going to follow events very carefully. If we can establish neighborly relations and a peaceful relations with the new forces emerging in Syria, that's our desire. But if we do not, we'll do whatever it takes to defend the state of Israel and the border of Israel.
Well, boys and girls, you know what that means. Israel grabs land in Syria's Golan Heights, warns villagers to stay home. Boy, they wasted no time, did they? Israel has seized territory in Syrian-controlled areas of the Golan Heights as its military warned Syrians living in 5 villages close to the Israeli-occupied portion of the strategic area to, quote, stay home. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he ordered Israeli forces to grab a buffer zone in the Golan Heights established by a 1974 ceasefire agreement with Syria after a lightning advance by Syrian opposition forces ended Bashar al-Assad's rule. So Netanyahu mentioned that in the video. There was a separation of forces agreement in 74 that resolved the Yom Kippur War. But now that there's no government to enforce that ceasefire, Israel says, well, now that's not in action anymore. Right. That's no longer valid because there's no government there to enforce it. So in the meantime, as a temporary defensive posture, we're going to go ahead and, well, you'll see. I don't want to give any spoilers here, but not good. Believe me, not good. Netanyahu said on Sunday that the decades-old agreement had collapsed.
That's the problem with genocide. It's like potato chips. One is never enough.
Yeah, exactly. Right, exactly. Netanyahu said on Sunday that the decades-old agreement had collapsed and that Syrian soldiers had abandoned their positions, necessitating the Israeli takeover. We will not allow any hostile force to establish itself on our border, he said. Israel captured a portion of the Golan Heights in the 1967 war and annexed it. The international community, except for the United States, views it as illegally occupied Syrian territory. After Netanyahu's comments, the Israeli military issued an urgent warning to Syrians living in Ofanaya, Quneitra, and Al-Hamadiyah. These are hard. Samdanaya, Al-Garbaya, and Al-Qatanaya. Wow, that is...
Better you than me, brother.
That is a hard one. All close to the Israeli-occupied portion of the Golan Heights. See, if we had Max Blumenthal or Aaron Mate or something about somebody who knew what the fuck they were talking about doing this segment with us, they could have just rattled that off like nothing.
We should get Norm to start.
You guys are stuck slumming it with us. Sorry about that. Yeah, we should get Norm to do this. The fighting in your area is forcing the IDF to act, and we do not intend to harm you, Colonel Avichai Adrai, the Israeli Army's Arabic language spokesman, said on social media. Agricultural areas in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights were declared closed military zones, and some schools shifted to online classes in anticipation of unrest. Yeah, this sounds wonderful. Speaking from the Lebanese-Syrian border, Al Jazeera's Zain Basravi said that Israel was taking advantage of al-Assad's fall. What is happening is certainly to the benefit of the Israeli military, of the Israeli government, Basravi said. They are getting what they have said they have wanted all along, weaker neighbors so they can push their regional agenda. Yes, remember Greater Israel. Yep. Meanwhile, Israeli media said on Sunday that the Israeli Air Force has bombed weapons depots in southern Syria and Damascus to prevent opposition groups from seizing them. We attacked ammunition depots in southern Syria and in the Damascus airport area for fears they might fall into the hands of armed groups and local factions, the Israeli public broadcaster KAN quoted an unnamed Israeli security official as saying. Israel is working to thwart any potential threats and prevent any damage to its air superiority in Syria, the official added. Israeli daily Yedoath Athronoth said weapons depots and surface-to-surface missile stockpiles were the targets of Israeli attacks in Syria without providing further details. Speaking with Damascus's military intelligence and customs headquarters ablaze in the distance behind him, Al Jazeera Arabic's Adam Abu al-Hussam said that fuel depots in the compounds had likely been hit. Keep in mind, folks, this is all within hours of the Syrian regime falling. Two regional security sources told the Reuters news agency that the security complex in Damascus's Kafr Sousa district had been hit by Israel. So here it is, a tweet from Hamda Salhut. Damascus, Israeli airstrikes target the Syrian capital. It comes as the Israeli army had created what they call a buffer zone in the occupied Golan Heights. So as you can see, they have wasted absolutely no time getting on with the greater Israel projects, doing what they do best. Can't take that away from them. So Max Blumenthal says the Syrian state, death by 1,000 imperialist cuts, soon to be ruled by 1,000 dictators. Sam Husseini, Syria is part of the payoff from the Ukraine provocation. U.S. bogs down Russia, so Syria is vulnerable. Israel as tip of spear of imperial project continues. Now, Caitlin Johnston expanded upon that a bit. Great take as always. Looks like Assad is on his way out. So this was before the Syrian government had formally fallen. Likely to be replaced by a U.S. puppet regime who will cut off supplies to Hezbollah in Lebanon. The empire notches another win. The U.S. proxy warfare in Lebanon and Ukraine makes a lot more strategic sense now. Many pundits on my end of the commentary spectrum have been calling those proxy wars self-defeating and framing them as the desperate flailings of a dying empire, which will only accelerate its demise. But now here we are watching the empire score a victory it's been chasing for years, with the Western Israeli stranglehold on the Middle East growing tighter than ever. One of the many perks of being the world's dominant superpower is that it gives you the luxury of time. If one regime change operation fails, don't worry, you can just move some chess pieces around and you can take another shot at it. This is kind of in line with what I said last time. When you're the empire, you can afford to fail. You can afford to waste time and money, right? If a coup attempt fails in Latin America, relax, there will be other coup attempts. If your efforts to grab...
We're like the world's trust fund, baby.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's exactly what it is. Yeah, just fail without consequence. Eventually, you'll get lucky and succeed, and then you'll be a big winner. If your efforts to grab Syria fail, you can just smash it with sanctions and occupy its oil fields to impoverish it while overextending its military allies in proxy conflicts elsewhere and grab it later. I mean, how accurate is that? That's exactly what we did. A good kickboxer throws many combinations with the understanding that most strikes will miss or be blocked or cause minimal damage, trusting that eventually one knockout blow will get through. No empire lasts forever, but there's no evidence that this one is going away anytime in the immediate future. This ugliness could conceivably drag itself out for generations. Well, that is extremely
Meme coins back on the menu, boys.
Yes. I mean, that is disturbing, but as usual from Caitlin Johnston, totally accurate and very, very smartly put. Now, Michael Tracy has the real question here, which determines how the Zionists are going to treat this. What is the position of the Syrian rebels on LGBTQ issues? Because we know they care so much about that, which is, of course... That's what's so amazing about this, is that you have the state of Israel, when it's convenient, they pound their chest, they stand up tall as the bastion of Western liberal values in a region of the world that so desperately needs them. Yet, as we'll find out in a later segment, this is sort of a multi-part story here, they aided the overthrow of the Assad government when they know damn well it's going to be replaced with the very Islamist savages, quote unquote, that they claim to be the bulwark against. It's all a matter of convenience. But yes, what Caitlin Johnston said, absolutely true. This is a win for the empire, and it's a win that makes the Ukraine quagmire look like less of a folly than we thought it may have been, because in the background, and this was the ball that I won't say we as a space took our eye off of, because there are people who are a lot smarter who've been following this a lot closer than we have, like Max and Aaron, who probably saw this kind of brewing all along. But generally, I think most of us in this space, broadly speaking, took our eye off the ball here and thought, well, this Ukraine thing is just suicide. Well, no, they were able to bog Russia down in Ukraine and get these rebels to take Syria, which they've been trying to get they've been trying to get it since 9/11, which we'll get to in a couple segments down, but they've been really trying to get it hard, for the last 13 years.
Right. Yeah, I wouldn't overstate the consequences of it. I mean, certainly it's a win, but battles don't make the war. With each advance, there is a greater growing coordination amongst opposing powers who greatly outnumber us and have a great deal of resources on their own. China, as you talk about it being communist, we can debate that. They are much further along in coordinating finance with cloud computation and social media apps and entertainment than we are, than our own Amazon. Like, they're much further along in that than our Bezoses, our Elons, our Zuckerbergs. In other words, they are leading us in the technology that is clearly going to define the future. A big part of the tension that we're having with China is actually the way that their financialization of the internet is creating the potential to bypass the payment systems that are controlled by the United States, the way that you move money, in other words, from one country to another. Sanctioning Russia really made a lot of countries start to run to the Chinese system of payments. So, yes, this is a big victory for the empire, and it's kind of old school Kissinger real politics, or going back further than that. This is very Game of Thrones. You bog down the opponent here, but your real objective is there. And sure, yeah, but it ain't over till the fat lady sings.
That is true. That is true. The concern, and this is kind of a segue into some of these future pieces that we have here as it pertains to this, is that, this is agitating for World War III. And once it blows up into that, at that point, it's no longer, real politic in the sense of like strategic maneuvering for, control of this region or that region. Now you're talking about the stakes getting much, much higher, much, much quicker. And so that is a caveat. But yes, I mean, I think what you're saying on its face is true.
And Israel is collapsing as a society.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, you might have gained some ground here, but your businesses are collapsing, your people are fleeing, and your diplomatic ties to the rest of the world are on fire. So it's a Pyrrhic victory, isn't it? These victories are coming at the expense of their ability to maintain a cohesive society.
I mean, I certainly get that, and I certainly hope that proves to be the most important point of this in the long run. But let's go on because we have more of this. So Mehdi Hassan had an interesting response to the toppling of the Bashar al-Assad regime in Syria. Mehdi Hassan tweets, "Some people who supported Palestinian freedom for the past 14 months seem upset about Syrians getting freedom from a dictator. And a lot of people who spent the past 14 months opposing Palestinian freedom are now cheering Syrians getting freedom. So much moral inconsistency." So he seems pretty happy about this Syrian quote unquote revolution, even though this is not only what Israel wanted, what Israel made happen, what Israel helped to make happen. So Fiorella Isabel says, "What's idiotically inconsistent is claiming to support Palestinians' freedom from Israel as Israel used rebranded al-Qaeda terrorists and idiot Erdogan, among others, to coup Syria and currently bomb it. Moron." Usman Noor had a good response to this, and he put his video up here too, which we're going to play a couple minutes of. Says, I represented dozens of Syrians in courts and tribunals who had suffered terribly under the Assad regime. Western commentators using this opportunity to bash Assad need to shut the fuck up, especially those who vote for genocide, and talk about morality. Direct response there to Mehdi Hassan. So here's a couple minutes of this.
People commenting on what's going on in Syria right now. And I got a message specifically for people from the UK and from the USA who are not Syrian. A lot of them bashing Assad, using this as a opportunity to condemn Assad and demonize him and explain how horrible he is. I get it. You're expressing that you think Assad is evil, and it's a legitimate point of view, okay? There's a lot of people who share that view, a lot of Syrians who share that view. No problem with expressing the view that Assad is evil. This is what pisses me off, is that every single time that a Western state has conducted military aggression in the Middle East or anywhere in the world, there is a whole platoon of liberal media spokespeople, article writers, so-called experts who are brought in to basically conduct propaganda in order to justify the military aggression. And this isn't new. This is as old as colonialism. Okay, when the British were colonizing Africa, they had a whole range of missionaries to sanitize the military aggression. And they would say, we are benevolent, we are interested in your civilization and your education. Fuck did they? They were there to conduct military aggression. They've done that with Saddam Hussein when they invaded Iraq. They did that against the Taliban when they invaded Afghanistan. They've done that with Palestine by blaming Hamas. They do that with Lebanon by blaming Hezbollah. They do that with Libya when they blamed Gaddafi. All of this fake concern that you seem to have about Syrians is bullshit. And I know that because I used to work as a barrister in the UK for refugees for 9 years during that whole time the civil war was going on against Syria. The UK was part of the fucking problem in Syria. The UK was supplying arms to, conducting reconnaissance, providing intelligence, and helping bomb Syria, okay? And a lot of the left wing actually voted for the government to do that. And what pisses me off is that created what Europe called the migrant crisis, okay? It was a crisis. Why? Because we were bombing the shit out of Syria and the people in Syria were having to leave their homes. So it was our crisis. All right. And you know how fucking badly we treated them? We treated them like absolute shit all across Europe.
So that's pretty well said. That is pretty well argued. And, this gives me deja vu from the Iraq war days of opposing the Iraq war. What did we all get called? Well, you thought Saddam Hussein was a great guy. I mean, the idiocy of that argument.
Yes, right.
The idiocy of that argument. And
why don't we
now,
take out the Saudi royal family if we're that concerned about human rights?
Right.
It's our ally. It's
exactly.
our ally. We don't give a shit about that.
Exactly. And I wanted to play this piece on top of that. First of all, this is kind of an exciting opportunity to get to plug one of my favorite shows and podcasts. This is comedian Mike Racine's show called Out for Smokes. It's mostly a comedy show. He doesn't do that much political content, but his politics are pretty good insofar as he has them, obviously, as you can see now, bringing Aaron Mate on the show. Let's talk to Aaron Mate. Well-titled episode as well. So yeah, check out this. It's an audio show. It's a YouTube channel too. Mike is a very funny guy, and I feel a special connection to Mike Racine since he's one of the very few other millennial dads in this space. There aren't that many millennial dads who do this for a living, but he's one of them. Yeah. So I'm a little biased in that sense, but it's a great show. And he had Aaron Mate on here, and Syria came up. This episode just came out 2 or 3 days back. Like I said, before Syria had fallen for real. But the subject came up, and, Mate, who gets called an Assadist all the time, I think gives a very, very smart rebuke, kind of similar to the one we just saw, but one that sort of puts things, in terms that I think are useful to put into words whenever that accusation is lobbed your way. So here's Aaron Mate.
Madrid, and I had a Syrian cab driver, and he was like the nicest guy. He spoke a little bit of English, and he was like, yes, family is very most important thing. I have 2-year-old and I have another kid on the way. And he talked about, he's mentioned the war a little bit, and that whole thing always seemed very complicated to me. But I guess it's not that.
Well, listen, it's a very divisive issue. You have people who really hate the government in Syria. Like, I've never seen an opposite, like an exiled community more hateful of their home government than in Syria. So, and that's partly, I mean, you have people who, you have elites, Syrian elites who just want to take over the country and rule it for themselves. That's their motive. Similar with like Ahmed Chalabi in Iraq, who, but then you have people who have suffered in the government. There's torture in prisons. There's repression. Dissidents are in prison for a long time. I mean, that's all true. So you have legitimate grievances. But the question is, when you have a repressive government, when you have an authoritarian government, is the answer to side with the CIA and Israel, who are arming an insurgency that is dominated by Al Qaeda and ISIS as well? Yeah. I mean, and the fact is, my concern as a Westerner, it's not my business who rules Syria. And it's not my business I'm responsible for what my government does. And nobody in Syria voted for Donald Trump or Joe Biden to bomb their country and arm insurgents and impose sanctions that raise the cost of bread. Right. And how is that in anybody's interest but, people who want to control the world for themselves? So
it'd almost be like if aliens funded January 6th, if there was like a more powerful race of aliens, and they gave them all weapons, like laser guns.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, we would not be happy if Russia or Syria armed January 6th
or
guys,
aliens,
or aliens. But yet we give ourselves the right to do that, and I just don't. I'm not on board with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard because is there anybody that you root for? Is there anything that you root for? I mean, sovereignty, I guess.
I mean, yeah, I root for anybody resisting imperialism or oppression. I mean, I have friends who protested the Syrian government back in 2011, but they didn't want regime change because they knew that basically what their options were. It was basically Assad, or it was the Muslim Brotherhood, or even worse, Al Qaeda, and they would rather have Assad because Assad at least protects the minorities of Syria.
Okay, so that I feel like is the really operative point here. And Aaron, one of the good things about that piece of sound there, it just like the previous piece of sound, like nobody is denying that Bashar al-Assad was an authoritarian. The point is, if you're pro-Palestine, how could you support an Israeli operation, which is essentially what it was, an Israeli and U.S. operation, to overthrow the Syrian government, which is now going to result in, at least in the short term, as we just saw in the previous segment, they started bombing Syria within hours.
Right.
The 1974 Separation of Forces Agreement was declared null and void within hours. Not because the new government said they weren't going to enforce it, because, hey, technically there's no government there to enforce it, so we have to assume that it's a green light. That's what Israel's going to do. So I don't understand. So when you have Mehdi Hassan talk about moral hypocrisy or moral inconsistency, to me, there is no moral inconsistency there. To me, if you're pro-Palestine, you have to be anti-intervention in Syria. That doesn't mean you're pro-Assad, as Mate just said. He says, I have friends there who protested against Assad. Even they understood that they were better off under Assad than this group coming in. These are and the other thing is, from an American standpoint, if we want to be America first about this, who attacked the U.S.? Al-Qaeda or Bashar al-Assad? Who attacked this country? Who's the bigger threat to us? Geopolitically speaking, who's agitating for World War III? Is it Assad? Is it Russia? Is it Iran? Or is it the United States and Israel? I won't even include Ukraine. Ukraine is basically just a pawn in the game. But all right, you can add Ukraine if you want.
They don't have agency.
Right. They don't really have agency. Who's the biggest danger to world peace? Is it Syria, Russia, Iran, or the United States and its vassal state in the region? Like, it's not even close. So I see no moral inconsistency there. And that's why people always come back to Mehdi Hassan being, for everything good he says about Palestine, at the end of the day, he functions as a tool of empire. And I think that's right.
Sure.
I think that's right.
You don't get to his level of the game if you are an opponent of empire. All of these people have that imperial mindset, and they pass it on to the people who get their news through these propagandistic sources. It's you look at what passes for sophistication is at best a Kissingerian realpolitik kind of thing, the kind of thing you get in Foreign Policy magazine, right? They'll acknowledge it's complicated, but in the end, it always comes down to those brown people are savages. Right. And, the liberal take is it's not the people's fault that they're badly led. Maybe once in a while they'll acknowledge past sins without ever acknowledging current ones. We did some bad stuff over there. That's why it's like that, right? Every now and then they might acknowledge that, but they never acknowledge that the ongoing problems are being caused by us. And in the end, coverage on this in these news sources range from this very Game of Thrones. Well, in the end, we've got to do what we've got to do. It's a dangerous world. Right. To what they give the real MSNBC morons, which is what Aaron is debunking here, right? It's just Assad is bad man. We care about getting bad men out of power and putting good government and democracy for these good people who have suffered. Like, we give a shit. Right. Like, all we care about is that Assad did not align with us. He could torture people in the town square and play Madonna like a virgin while he does it. We would give a shit if we do not care about that. If we did, we'd invade Saudi Arabia, or we'd instigate an invasion of Saudi Arabia.
Right. He was a check on Greater Israel. He had this ceasefire in place going back 50 years. That was an obstacle to Netanyahu. That was an obstacle to Israel. They couldn't wait. They couldn't wait to start bombing Syria within minutes of this new government starting to take shape. Assad Abu Khali said, I never had a good word to say about the Syrian regime and never written or said a word of praise for the regime since Hafid al-Assad days. But how can we talk about Syria and not talk about Israeli-U.S. plans for the region to destroy state and society in Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, and Libya? No matter how ugly a regime is, U.S. and Israel managed to replace it with something much worse. Look at Libya and Iraq. In Afghanistan, the U.S. established a regime so repugnant that people preferred the Taliban. Yes, Margaret Kimberly says this is, I think, very well put as well. You can't have it both ways. The fall of Syria's government was a Zionist project. If you're expressing anything other than condemnation of the U.S., Israel, Turkish-backed terrorists, you're on Netanyahu's side. Yes, it really is that simple at the end of the day. Now, Keith Woods here tweets out, this is a segment, this is an exhibit from this article that we'll read a little bit of. He quotes AQ, that stands for Al-Qaeda, is on our side in Syria. That is a quote from who? U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan to Hillary Clinton, who was Secretary of State in 2012. See the highlighted text. AQ is on our side in Syria. How is this not treasonous? Al-Qaeda attacked the United States. Did the Syrian government ever attack the United States? Now we're saying this was only 11 years after. 11 years after 9/11. They're on our side in Syria. I mean,
it's really the meme. How long does it take for a conspiracy to become reality? Right.
Right.
About 3 years.
Yeah. Right.
Because you always heard this from people that Al-Qaeda is working with the United States, and here you go. This isn't even a recent thing. This is going all the way back to 2012, and as people will say, going back to 9/11, as I assume you're getting into.
Yep. Well, that's for the next piece. But for now, I do want to read some of this article here because it's very good. So Keith Woods puts an article on his Substack. For years, Israel has supported radical jihadi groups in Syria, most notably Al-Qaeda. And so the piece is called Israel's Love Affair with Syrian Jihadis. from his Substack, Zionist apologists commonly present support for Israel as a necessary extension of opposition to radical Islam and the threat of jihadi terrorism. Support us fighting them here so you don't have to fight them there is a common plea to the West from Zionist spokespeople within Israel. Yet when it comes to the Syrian civil war, the conflict which sparks the major refugee crisis responsible for flooding Europe with millions of Muslims, Israel has been firmly on the side of jihad, even and most particularly al-Qaeda. Israeli support for jihadis in Syria first became known in the West when reports circulated of Israel providing medical care to anti-Assad fighters on its contested border with Syria. I encourage you to look up Keith Wood's Substack here, keithwoods.pub, because all of these claims that he makes are pretty thoroughly sourced. In the interest of time, we're not going to go through the sourcing, but you should definitely check out this piece. Israel portrayed this as a principled humanitarian response, but in 2015, the Wall Street Journal reported that only a third of those treated by Israel were women and children. In 2019, an outgoing Israeli army commander, Gadi Eisenkot, confirmed suspicions that as well as medical aid, Israel had been providing lethal material support, for Syrian jihadists. Eisenkot said that Israel had been years providing light arms weapons to rebel groups along the Syrian-Israeli border. Eisenkot also acknowledged that, quote, we carried out thousands of attacks in recent years without taking responsibility and without asking for credit. Israel also carried out numerous airstrikes in the region, which exclusively benefited groups like al-Nusra Front. In one incident, Israel responded to some rebel group firing rockets in the occupied Golan Heights by launching airstrikes on Syrian army artillery positions. In a year-and-a-half period from 2017 to 2018, Israel carried out over 200 airstrikes in Syria, mostly directed at Iranian forces assisting the Syrian army. In a 2015 interview, Bashar al-Assad responded to the question of Israel's agenda in Syria. They are supporting the rebels in Syria. It's very clear because whenever we make advances in some place, they make an attack in order to undermine the army. It's very clear. That's why some in Syria joke, how can you say that al-Qaeda doesn't have an air force? They have the Israeli Air Force. Although the U.S. publicly claimed it did not intentionally support Islamists like al-Qaeda and ISIS in Syria, leaked internal documents have repeatedly shown that U.S. officials were aware that these groups dominated the Syrian opposition and were often the chief beneficiaries of their aid. When ISIS did emerge, many voices within Israel saw it as a positive. A 2016 paper by an Israeli strategic think tank that contracts for NATO and the Israeli government argued against destroying the Islamic State since, quote, the continuing existence of ISIS serves as a strategic purpose and could be a useful tool in undermining Israel's enemies of Hezbollah, Iran, Syria, and Russia. 2016 paper. Arguing against the perspective that a defeat of ISIS would help stabilize the Middle East, the paper noted that stability is not a value in and of itself. It is desirable only if it serves our interests. The defeat of ISIS would encourage, or Islamic State, IS, would encourage Iranian hegemony in the region, buttress Russia's role, and prolong Assad's tyranny. So there you have it. Like I said, that article sources everything out. In the interest of time, we didn't read the whole thing. But that article, in addition to what we've been talking about here, I mean, the case is open and shut. This has been pretty much common knowledge that these rebel groups have functioned at the behest and with the help of the United States, the CIA, and Israel, and NATO. And so this is an imperial project. This was an imperial project going back, like I said, really since 9/11, but formally for the past 13 years as this civil war has raged on. And so, long way of saying there's nothing morally inconsistent about saying that this was a horrible development. Now, are there prisoners who are going to be freed now, who are languishing in jail? Yes, there were. And as Aaron Mate said in that piece, he knows people who have been protesting for human rights in Syria. And, obviously you feel for them, and obviously falls to them to fight for a future that they want. But when you look at this big picture, this is agitation for World War III. That is what this is, against forces that were providing, yes, stability in that region, just like Saddam Hussein provided a certain stability in that region that ISIS did not. And so to me, there's nothing at all inconsistent or hypocritical about saying that this was a very dangerous development for the world.
That white paper offers a rare insight into what the agenda really is among these people. They want destabilization. Have you heard a word about Libya, about slave markets? Have you seen them make any effort to stabilize that region, to overthrow the armed bands that are making life hell for the people there after we took out Gaddafi? No, because we like it this way. A country divided and destabilized can't be a threat. And this is, again, this is why when people talk about the migrants and blame the migrants, well, I understand why you would feel that having millions of migrants coming in without the infrastructure to support that is a problem. Don't blame the migrant. Blame your government. Blame your government. This is why they're coming. People don't just pick up and leave everything they've ever known by the millions because everything's peachy there. And no, it's not, in spite of what you might get from the propaganda. No, it's not their fault. If you're a Westerner in some way, somewhere along the line, it is probably the fault of your government. Your government is probably profiting from this or supporting it in some way, some like ours more directly than others.
Well, yeah, I mean, this was an angle. We could have attacked this from 20 different angles and been here for 7 hours this evening, but so this didn't make the show lineup tonight. Maybe we'll do a segment on it later in the week. The predominant MAGA take on this was, so now that Syria is free, we can send the refugees back, right? Like, it's just all comes down to that for them. They just can't wait to, drag a brown person out of their 1-bedroom apartment.
Well,
and Syria's not free now. This is the point. This is what they don't understand. Like, no, it's actually going to get worse. The dumbest of the dumb are the people who are like, yeah, it's good that Bashar al-Assad is gone, but I sure hope this doesn't become another Libya or another Iraq. What the fuck kind of brain dead take is that? That's like saying, yeah, I raw dogged it with her 8 times last night and she's ovulating. Sure hope she's not pregnant. Yeah.
Right.
I would hate for that to happen.
Well, clearly that's what they want it to be. And if you really want to wake up, if you really want to open your eyes, look at the fact, as many people have pointed out, and it was always dismissed as a conspiracy theory, Al-Qaeda has such a hard-on for Israel. Why don't they ever attack Israel? Why don't they ever attack Israeli interests? They're able to attack the United States. They can certainly attack Israel. They're able to attack targets in Europe. They can't.
They attacked us here. Remember the guy with the truck on the West Side Highway in New York City?
Yeah. That's a bicycle lane I always ride.
Yep.
So they can't attack them. So why not? Because this is all by design. When I used to drive a horse and carriage, I worked with Turkish guys who had been in the Turkish military. They told me this over 10 years ago, and I dismissed it at the time because I was kind of a lib. They told me that their observation from being in the Turkish military, the operations that they saw, the intention of the United States was to destabilize the region. Because at that time, what was going on in Iraq was still front page news. And they were telling me they don't want a democracy and a stable society there. What's happening now, that's exactly the way they want it. And now we've seen this happen in more and more countries that we've gotten involved in, and Syria is one more. Now you'll have extremist Muslims taking over, and we'll have other people fighting against them, and then we'll blame the people for having bad leaders and it's complicated. That's always the blanket thing. And most Americans are too incurious to ask any questions beyond that. If they ask too many questions, you tell them it's complicated.
Exactly. Yep. All right. So now let's get nuts. So as we know, folks, the Syrian government has officially fallen. And this is a piece of video that has since resurfaced over the last 12 or 13 hours or so. Only Iran is left among the original targets of neocons and Zionists. So here's General Wesley Clark, who ran for president in 2004. This is an interview with Democracy Now! In 2007, where he recounts hearing about plans to topple 7 countries in 5 years in the days following 9/11/2001. This is a piece of video I've seen quite a few times, but I'm glad this is getting talked about again now because this is a chilling piece of sound here.
10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me. And one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
Wow. Days, not months, days after 9/11, we plan to take out 7 countries in 5 years. You know, people think they lied about everything related to the Iraq War.
When was this?
This interview was 2007. So this is while Bush was still in office. Now, people say that, you know, the Bush team lied about everything vis-a-vis the Iraq War. And that is technically not true. I don't think they were lying when they said they thought it was going to take 6 days, 6 weeks, maybe 6 months. Because when you look at their plans to realign the Middle East within their term, they thought it could happen that easily. They thought Iraq was going to fall like that. They thought they were going to be able to completely rearrange that part of the world in 7 years. And it has taken them a lot longer than that, and they're not done yet. But if you look, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Iran's the only one left. The only one left. Now, because imperial powers tend to be extremely arrogant, it's taken them much longer than they thought, and they're not done yet. But that is the plan. And the think tank that the Bush cabinet was all a part of in the 90s was called A Project for a New American Century. This is a vision for perpetual war and a realignment of the Middle East that is now almost complete to their liking. Not quite. And Iran is that final boss. And they may not get there, but they are one step closer now. And that is an absolutely chilling video. That tells you what these people are all about. That tells you what this government is all about. That this guy is saying days after 9/11, they're saying we got plans for 7 countries in the next 5 years. You know who's not on that list? The Saudis. And that's where the hijackers came from. Isn't that funny?
Yep. Well, when you look at the fact that they have followed that plan exactly, there's no reason to think they won't go into Iran. I'm sorry. This
They
is
want
why.
it. Well, of course. That's what I mean. They want
Yeah.
it. That's the plan.
This is why I will not simp for the Trump administration. Nobody has been louder about wanting to start a war with Iran than Trump has.
Right.
Like if there's any wrecking crew that's going to go ahead and start a war with Iran, it's these guys. None of the people that he's appointing are dovish. None of these people, wherever that Tulsi that used to talk about having peaceful relations with Assad went, we haven't seen that Tulsi in a very long time. There's nobody on that team who's not a bloodthirsty, warmongering fucking maniac. So what do you think's going to happen with all of this in play when they come into office? Why, you think Trump's going to say, nah, I don't think we should start anything with Iran? You might say that about Russia. He's not going to say it about Iran. That's the last one on the list. That's the last one on their bingo card.
Yep. And it doesn't look like they are stopping. We have one more Syria-related story, and this has to do with Donald Trump's response. So Donald Trump put out on Truth Social his take on the Syrian revolution, quote unquote, if we want to call it that. Opposition fighters in Syria, in an unprecedented move, have totally taken over numerous cities in a highly coordinated offensive and are now on the outskirts of Damascus, obviously preparing to make a very big move towards taking out Assad. Russia, because they are so tied up in Ukraine and with the loss there of over 600,000 soldiers, seems incapable of stopping this literal march through Syria, a country they have protected for years. This is where former President Obama refused to honor his commitment of protecting the red line in the sand, and all hell broke out with Russia stepping in. So,
with the all caps, he was really born for this age. He is the king of the trolls.
That is true. Yes. But now they are, like possibly Assad himself, being forced out, and it may actually be the best thing that can happen to them. There was never much of a benefit in Syria for Russia other than to make Obama look really stupid. In any event, Syria is a mess, but is not our friend, and the United States should have nothing to do with it. This is not our fight. Let it play out. Do not get involved. Okay.
Well, we're already pretty deeply involved. They didn't tell him? Nobody told him?
First of all, we are involved. What do you mean? It was our op. It was a
U.S.
Israel NATO operation. Like, what do you mean? Don't get involved. We did it. We did it. If we had not gotten involved, there'd have been no Arab Spring, which is the other thing that doesn't make sense about saying that, well, this is because Obama refused to enforce the line in the sand. Well, then you're saying we should have been involved sooner, right? I mean, it's a completely incoherent point and completely ignores the fact that we already did this. So we already are involved. You can't say at this state of the game we should not be involved. It's done already. It's done. It's too late for that. What are you even talking about? What does that even mean?
Yeah,
that's just relying on the ignorance of your base. That's relying on people not knowing the first thing about any of this, which I guess, I don't know, most people don't.
This is why I say Donald Trump doesn't know shit about fuck.
Yeah.
Like you really think he's making these grand geopolitical decisions? Or do you think he's got a bunch of people around him who whisper in his ear? They say, oh, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Yeah, why don't we do that? When are we getting to the rally? I got some great new material. I want to work out on the crowd. So he likes to do stadium rallies. He was president once, and then he spent years licking his wounds, and then becoming president again. And he's still so fucking ignorant that he would put something like that out, which I don't think it's a feint. I think he honestly doesn't know. Even though it's completely obvious to anybody at this point that we're behind this. I don't think they tell him those things. I don't think he's curious enough to look into it on his own. And this is a big part of why I say people talk about Trump's cabinet picks. It's like saying Biden's cabinet picks. We said Jake Sullivan was the president. It's not clear to me exactly who really has his ear or makes these decisions about, hey, let's throw up unconfirmable Matt Gaetz so that we can say that we tried to put in a MAGA pick and then have Bondi ready to go. I don't think Trump's doing that. I think the people around him are. And this demonstrates it pretty clearly.
Yeah. Now, all that being said, I mean, I think that's probably right. All that being said, if you really don't think this is our fight, Mr. Trump, you know what you could do? You could defund Israel because it's certainly their fight. And so if we keep funding Israel and we keep arming Israel, and they've been bombing Syria all day. The government just fell. They've been bombing Syria all fucking day. So if you really don't think this is our fight,
she gave me a lot of money.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing. Like, if you don't think this is our fight, stop giving Israel money. Because if we give Israel the bombs and the money to wage this war to expand greater Israel into Syria, then guess what? We are making it our fight. It is our fight at that point. So ball's in your court. If you want to put your money where your mouth is, you're going to have to stop sending Israel that aid. But of course, there's a conflict there, isn't there? $100 million worth.
I told her, you give me $100 million, do whatever you want. I appoint whoever you want in the cabinet. I'll even go down on you on Fridays.
Right, exactly. So there you have it. All right, folks, that concludes our Syria coverage for the night. I know there was a lot. We hope you got something out of that. We'll go on with some super chats, Rumble Rant. Still plenty of shows tonight.
I thought you were going to go full 9/11 conspiracy. I was looking forward to that.
Oh, well, no. I mean, look, the conspiracy's in broad daylight. Dude, the fucking guy is, Rumsfeld is telling him 9 days after 9/11, yeah, we got 7 countries we're going to take out. I mean, that's the conspiracy right there.
Sure.
Like at that point, I mean, at that point, how could you think anything else?
Sure.
Yeah. Jackass Whiskey says you can tell a lot about a person by the bookshelves and the number of soft covers on said bookshelves. Both of you are lacking. What do you mean lacking? You mean, because we lack hardcovers? Is that what you're saying? There's more hardcovers here?
I mean, we got a fair amount of hardcovers back
there.
there.
A lot of hardcovers. This is a hardcover. This is a good book. This is about a great chapter in history.
What is
we should
that?
do a deep dive on this.
What
This
is
is about
that?
the
I don't
Ludlow
know that
massacre.
book.
The Ludlow massacre.
Ludlow
Passion.
Street?
Yeah.
Was it over Pastrami?
No, this is where was it? This was in Colorado. This was one of the first labor strikes that the Rockefellers cracked down on with violence.
Yes. Interesting.
That's a good one. And that's a hardcover. See? Got that shit when it first came out. Hot off the press. How do you like that?
Well, you know, me and Keaton had a meeting, and we're about to redo our sets.
Yep.
So a lot of these books are going away.
See, this is Richard
sets,
III.
We're changing our lighting.
Now, this came out in hardcover in 1671, so I was not around to catch that one. I had to catch the.
You don't have the Riverside Shakespeare?
Yeah. No, you know what I did? I sprung for, this is how big a Shakespeare nerd I was. You can get the complete works for like $11 or $12, but I was such a nerd and I was such an avid Shakespeare guy back in my theater days that I actually bought the individual Folger copies because these were cheap. These were only like $4 each.
Yeah, no, I have the Riverside.
Yeah, and they're a lot more user-friendly,
book.
because I was young. What was I, like 18, 19? So I wasn't good at it enough to read like the complete works. I needed the more thorough, side notes and stuff. So yeah, I got quite a few of those. Thank you though, Jackass Whiskey. Fun Bad says, as the only Zoomer, Jake Paul is a big nuisance. There you go. Switch Thinker, thanks for the 10 Canadian dollars. I'm old, but if Hawk Tuah on some real coin and sent it to me in the mail, I'd be in. There you go. Michael Ewan says you should try and get CoffeeZilla on the show or the Jimmy Dore show. Yeah, that'd be fun. Get CoffeeZilla.
That would be pretty interesting.
That would be a funny one.
So,
all right.
Mr. CoffeeZilla, what exactly is crypto?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Where do we got here? Here it is. Jackass Whiskey. You can't get rich quick, but you can get rich very slowly. It's not hard, and you don't have to be smart. Discipline is the key. You can't time any market. If you could, the market would cease. Gareth Richmond. Yeah,
sure. If there was like that's where in the end Warren Buffett is right. Pick companies that you have good reason to believe will grow, buy them, and hold them forever. That's it. That's all you can do. So like trying to time the market and trade, eventually you make the wrong trade, you lose it all.
Right. Gareth Richmond says, I made a decent chunk of change on GameStop. I spent it all on strippers, charge, and do dissident super chats. 100 out of 100 would do again. Well, thank you, Garrett. Appreciate that. Jackass Whiskey says penny stocks are regulated more than crypto. Switch thinker. USSR recently descended to vodka NATO Hawk Tuahs. There you go. Jackass Whiskey. Crypto is fiat, just like our Federal Reserve notes, perhaps more so. Iron Man, my two favorite small hats. Christ bless you guys. Thank you. Behan Edamad, thanks for the $5. The ladies on Quad at Jewish News Syndicate would like Trump to create a Kurdistan. They order wars like it's takeout. Thank you for that. Landrew is here. Let's have a sound drop for Landrew for $100. Thank you, Landrew. Rebranding of ISIS al-Nusra the American way. Free Palestine. Censorship. Yep, I hear you.
I am Landrew. Landrew is dead.
See what you did there, though, Landrew, to get around that. Thank you very much for your kindness, as always. Good sir. Appreciate that very, very much. Siddhartha Vicious, what has more lead in? Oh, got to read that one over on the other side. Mars is maybe not. Who knows? Mars sounds like he works for Disney and not HBO. Yeah, there you go. Nickelodeon, right? Stoop sign, just want to make enough money to leave a decent amount of blowjobs to my kids. Thank you. Exactly. It's funny. Hawk is a scam, but Inidium and Dobu coins are going to the moon. Let's hold HDOL dissidents. What is that?
Hold.
Let's hold this. Oh, okay, so it's a typo. All right.
No. It's like a meme. It's vernacular.
Oh, okay. I didn't know.
It's crypto vernacular.
Yeah, I don't know. Kenman G. Bill Maher used to say on his show that young men should be more like him, funny and social if they want to meet girls. He said he had no problems getting girls in high school. Is that right? We should all be more like him. He's a great
he has no problem paying for high school girls.
Yeah. So the Hawk Tuah girl is getting blowback. Yes. Good, well put, nicely said. Put Hawk Tuah girl in MoMA for an act with the banana. There you go. Yeah, that's good.
Best audience.
You
could tell how high quality this audience is.
Yeah, from the jokes.
They're legit funny.
They're legit funny. Yeah, they are actually funny. Yes, indeed. I agree. Okay. All right. We got a couple more segments here before we move over to the Rumble side. So why don't we get that going now, and then we'll do the scroll after this one.
Okay. So we have a segment. I've been waiting. You could argue for as long as we've had a show. I have been waiting to do this segment. I call it the trans with a schmendrick segment.
Trans with a schmendrick swinging it in a girl's bathroom.
I have been waiting for this case to go to the Supreme Court. I have said for as long as we've had a show, eventually this is going to end with lawsuits, this madness of deciding that children can have experimental medical treatments performed on them based on a child's fancy. So this finally made its way to the Supreme Court. And according to pretty much all the court watchers, as you can see in the headline, the U.S. Supreme Court appears likely to uphold a medical ban affecting trans youth. So this is the lawyer who argued the case on behalf of the plaintiffs who brought
lawyer.
it.
I didn't know. I didn't watch this video because this isn't my beat, but I didn't know this was the lawyer.
This is the ACL lawyer. It is the first trans person to argue a case in front of the Supreme Court. I will say, having listened to most of the actual proceedings, did a good job making a batshit argument. But in terms of the lawyering, these justices, many of them came prepared, threw out a lot of curveballs, and Strangia was prepared to bullshit through those curveballs. If you know the literature, if you know the facts, you know how slippery the arguments were, but that's what lawyers do, right?
Nobody has to provide this medication to adolescents. These are not doctors being forced to provide this medication. These are doctors who are wanting to treat their patients in the best way that they know how, based on the best available evidence to us. And these are young people who may have known since they were 2 years old exactly who they are, who suffered for 6-7 years before they had any relief. And what's happening here, it's not the kids who are consenting to this treatment, it's the parents who are consenting to the treatment. And as a parent, I would say when our children are suffering, we are suffering. And these are parents who love their children, who are listening to the advice of their doctors, of the mainstream medical community, and doing what's right for their kids. And the state of Tennessee has displaced their judgment.
All right, so that gives you an idea of the whole big ball of wrong that they're bringing into this court. First of all, arguing that at 2 years old you can diagnose gender dysphoria is absolutely sick. It's beyond absurd. That is a sick proposition to say that based on what a 2-year-old is presenting as, particularly, you can make that kind of a determination, and then goes on to say overwhelming medical evidence, which Alito really came in guns blazing and knocked down that idea. That is a lie. That is just a straight out lie that the overall medical literature supports this course of treatment. And then to get around the argument that children can't consent to it while the parents are consenting to it. Okay, well, there's a disorder that I feel if they ever actually, for political reasons, I don't think anybody's tried to even do this research. There is a condition where people believe that limbs that they have shouldn't be there. Okay, well, what if your child had that and the parent decided, you know what, we should remove the limb? Would we allow that? So the idea that parents, by definition, can consent to any treatment on behalf of their children is likewise insane. All right, so, but as I said, in court, did pretty well with making a completely batshit argument just on style points. So here is some footage of the scene outside the court, both before and after the hearing.
I think the greatest gift of my life is to have kids, and to have a transgender child has made me so much more interesting, so much more wise.
The transitioning of
it has often been observed that if this is such a rare syndrome and there's no social contagion element to this, why does there seem to be such a concentration of trans children among Hollywood celebrities? It almost seems like they like having that accessory, and you can kind of see it in this very narcissistic statement about how much more interesting it's made her to have a trans child. That was Annette Bening. There's
Right.
Chloe Cole, who's a very famous victim of this kind of treatment.
children is so awful and horrific that it's managed to create this massive movement that has unified Democrats, Republicans, Christians, atheists, and really just about everybody to fight for the safety of our children. Because no child deserves to feel the pains of menopause at the age of 13 like I did. No child deserves joint issues before they can legally drive a car. No child deserves to cry in anticipation of whether they've been sterilized or not by cross-sex hormones. And yet, this is how I live every single day.
Protect trans kids! Protect trans kids!
Due to the lack
it will be almost impossible to stop.
In what age do you think most trans kids determine that they're trans?
Violet told us when she was 1.5. She's been telling us since she could speak. So she knew since birth.
Children have the constitutional right, the human right, the God-given right to live and grow and learn about themselves and the world without being indoctrinated and exploited by people who reject the fundamental realities of existence. Children have a right to go through phases, to have moments of confusion and discomfort in their own bodies, just like every generation of children before them, without that confusion being seized upon as a pretense to do irreparable harm to their bodies. So to the trans activists over there claiming that this is all about the rights of children, I say again, yes, you're right, it is. They have a right to be protected from you. Children have a right to be protected from all of those people over there who want to harm them and damage them and destroy them. And they will be.
What's funny about this episode of the show is we're going to trash Matt Walsh later, but where he's right, and I agree with him in this area. In 2020, Justice Neil Gorsuch delighted progressives and infuriated many on the right when he wrote for a 6-3 majority that Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 barred discrimination against gay, lesbian, and transgender employees. That ruling, Bostock versus Clayton County, so alarmed Josh Hawley, Missouri's junior senator, that he rose on the Senate floor to warn against the, quote, end of the conservative legal movement as we know it. The most significant change in the public policy landscape is the adoption of laws banning certain medical treatments for transgender minors. In 2020, there were no such laws. Today, they are found in 26 states. United States versus Skermeti, which the Supreme Court heard on December 4th, concerns one such law in Tennessee. Skermeti asks whether Tennessee's restrictions on medical treatment for trans minors violate the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. The law's challengers, 3 children and their parents, along with the federal government, say denying puberty blockers and hormone therapy to trans youth while allowing them for others amounts to unconstitutional discrimination. After 2.5 hours of argument, the court's 3 liberal justices, Ketanji Brown Jackson, Alina Kagan, and Sonia Sotomayor, seemed to side with the challengers. 4 of the court's 6 conservative justices, Samuel Alito, Brett Kavanaugh, Clarence Thomas, and the Chief, John Roberts, looked to be on Tennessee's side. Justice Amy Coney Barrett's questions suggested an open mind, leaning toward Tennessee, while the author of The Last Win for Transgender Plaintiffs, Justice Gorsuch, was the only member of the court to remain silent throughout the hearing. Now, I'm just going to interject a little, having listened to most of it. All right, Jackson, Kagan, and Sotomayor, they basically acted as unabashed advocates for the plaintiffs, like to the point that at certain points they were leading them. Yes, and isn't it true that these kinds of treatment offer relief to more children than are detransition? It just acting as advocates, like they're not even couched within the framework of a meaningful legal question. Like it was embarrassing. I'll also point out the article mentions that the court previously ruled in favor of transgender plaintiffs. So, as seems likely, they're going to be ruling in this case in favor of Tennessee, and it's going to be called bigotry, but that doesn't really jive with how they ruled in the last case regarding transgender rights.
Well, it's not a question of that, and I would just pause for a minute while we're stopped for a second here. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a question of bigotry, and I also don't think it's necessarily a question of parents meaning their kids harm, or I don't think it's a matter of ordinary people trying to hurt kids. I think they are mixed up in this. I think the culprit, and it's ironic because Matt Walsh has some comments about this in a future segment that don't exactly jive with what I'm saying. I think if there's a culprit here, it is a for-profit healthcare system. This is not a question of litigating who people are and how they choose to live their lives. This is a problem. This is a question of, do you regulate the practice of medicine such that, in the case of this question here, is it a reasonable concern to suggest that this condition is being overdiagnosed by opportunistic doctors who see dollar signs in their eyes when they see a chance to permanently medicalize someone so young. Because that's what you are. You're permanently medicalized at that point. You are a cash register at that point. And so that's a fair question. That has nothing to do with judgments against people or bigotry against people. It's not that gender dysphoria does not exist, but there is a question: is it being overdiagnosed for opportunistic reasons? And do states have the right to regulate that when it comes to people under 18 who are not old enough to make that choice for themselves?
That is, strictly speaking, that's the narrow legal question. And that's all that's being addressed here. Obviously, it's beyond the scope of the court to judge how people raise their children.
Right, so that's
You're
what I'm
not
saying.
talking
It's
about
not, you're not going to be able to,
experimental.
to say the
Well,
court's
they're
bigoted
not.
is not, that's not being litigated here.
Sure. In terms of the medical industry, we've done previous segments on that, and Matt Walsh, whatever other disagreements we might have with him, he brought a lot of that to light. We've used his video in the past that he didn't have to break into a vault to find. They had it originally up on a conference page showing doctors talking, salivating about how much money there is to be made in these treatments. In terms of, what the intention is of people, look, I don't think it's an accident that you have this, bizarre explosion of this among Hollywood celebrities. There absolutely are liberals who like to virtue signal off having children who are presenting as non-binary and what have you. I've dealt with people like that. I've literally gotten phone calls from people like that gleefully telling me about their encounters with trans children. That absolutely exists among the liberal class. But that's certainly beyond the beyond the scope of this case. That's obviously not what they're litigating.
Yeah. And I don't think that is necessarily the norm. I tend to think that
I think a lot of them are misled.
Ordinary people, yes, I think a lot of them are misled. I think ordinary
Sure.
people tend to mean well. Most parents mean their
Sure.
kids well.
Sure.
Most parents do not view their children in that way. I'm not saying no one does, and certainly celebrities are such narcissists that they would be the most inclined to.
That's what I'm saying.
View a child as a commodity.
I mean, look at how Annette Bening framed that.
Of course. Well, that's psychotic, and she's a very wealthy, narcissistic Hollywood actor, so I wouldn't put it past her to feel that way. And then I think downstream of that, I think, ordinary people get swept up in that.
Yes,
celebrity
I
culture
agree.
is a powerful
I agree.
thing. Yeah.
I agree. So the Biden administration Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelogar told the justices that Tennessee's law discriminated on the basis of sex and should be analyzed under a heightened scrutiny standard, the rigorous evaluation the courts must apply when the government treats women and men differently. But Matthew Rice, Tennessee's Solicitor General, said the state's legislation was designed to, quote, protect minors from risky, unproven medical interventions and bars treatment for some medical purposes, but not others. That is not sex discrimination, he said, so heightened scrutiny does not apply. So this got very interesting. At a certain point, I'm not sure if it was Roberts. I don't have that clip. But one of them was saying, well, hey, these are contentious medical issues that jurists are really not qualified to weigh in on. There's no constitutional element here. Why shouldn't this not be left to the legislatures? And it seems to me that's going to be the basis of their ruling, that they're just going to argue like this is up to the states, right? It basically Dobbs. They're not going to outlaw it, but it'll be state by state.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. This way, hey, the states that want to roll the dice, what happens at the Mayo Clinic stays at the Mayo Clinic. That'll be Minnesota's state motto. Literally.
Or ordinarily, and also if you look at the logic that they're trying to argue at one point, because they're really trying to slip in a definition of sex, of gender as sex, of transgender people as being another sex. Because at one point, the issue was raised at several points, actually. Well, this applies to both boys and girls. So how could it be sex discrimination? And they're repeatedly arguing, well, but if a boy wants to take testosterone to become more masculine because they're not having puberty or whatever, that's going to be acceptable, and it'll be acceptable in girls. But if a girl wants to take the testosterone, they can't. So that's sex discrimination because specifically trans people can't take it. But at that point, to accept that argument, you have to say the trans person is another sex to call it sex discrimination. And it mentions earlier this Bostock ruling that was written by Gorsuch that upheld the rights of trans people against discrimination. And there was a lot of back and forth with the justices who were saying that you're relying on Bostock, but that's a completely different case. That there's no medical element to Bostock. There's no compelling reason that you might not want to allow that.
Well, this is totally unrelated, and we won't go down this road, but as long as we're on the topic, and this is an unpopular thing to say in certain corners of the podcasting business, but I think supplements should be regulated a lot more and perhaps have age minimums on these substances. You get a fucking supplement that says it's got a testosterone booster in it. It could be nothing. It could be a sugar pill. They're not regulated at all. You don't know if it's safe. You don't know if it works.
Well, of course they should be regulated.
Yeah.
That's why before you take any shit like that, you got to do a lot of research.
Yeah, exactly.
Ordinarily, conservative justices disdain looking abroad for legal inspiration, but Justice Alito in particular noted increasing skepticism toward pediatric transitioning in Finland, Sweden, and the United Kingdom. Hey, what do they all have in common that we don't have here? Oh, universal health care.
Right.
He pointed to the Cass review.
There's less crime, too, because they don't have healthcare CEOs.
Yeah.
It's good for crime. Good crime mitigation policy as well.
Well, you know what? I was looking at Status Quo did a segment about Chris Cuomo's reaction, and he was showing actually CEO accidents in Europe are not as uncommon as they are here. Not health insurance industry, like the CEO of Renault got whacked. He pointed after he did like mass layoffs.
Yeah, that's horrible.
Yeah, it's terrible. We would never condone that. He pointed to the Cass review, a report on the UK services for children diagnosed with gender dysphoria led by Hilary Cass, a retired pediatrician, which Justice Alito said found no high-quality evidence showing that the treatment's benefits outweigh the risks. Ms. Prelogar acknowledged the debate happening here and abroad about such treatments, and you'll hear some of that, and how to identify the adolescents for whom it would be helpful, but noted that none of these countries, in contrast to Tennessee, has outright banned the care. Okay, this is a good example of how slippery these arguments got. Yes, it's true they didn't ban the care. They're allowing it strictly within clinical trial settings. Whereas they made it sound like, no, they just raised the standards. No, they banned it except for clinical trial purposes. And she offered an example of an approach that would not offend the Constitution. West Virginia, she said, has adopted a set of guardrails that are far more precisely tailored to address concerns around care, including mental health screening, needing 2 doctors to diagnose gender dysphoria, and permitting treatment only when medically necessary to guard against the risk of self-harm. Well, we're going to answer what the problem is with this. As we were just discussing, the medical industry is so profit-driven in this country, and it's been so captured by this ideology. That really doesn't fix it. You have right now, as we'll see a little later, somebody who is suing the biggest gender clinic in the country in San Francisco for rushing them into transition. The same exact doctor is one who just repressed their own study because it showed that these treatments are not effective. So how can you trust the doctors when they're suppressing the evidence? When they're suppressing the evidence, even if they say, no, this is indicated here, you can't trust them. But several justices resisted sending Skrmetti back to the lower court with instructions to analyze it anew with heightened scrutiny. This path would require, quote, determinations by lay judges regarding complicated medical issues, Justice Alito said. Chief Justice Roberts, who joined the majority in Bostock, worried that judges may not be suited to conduct this scrutiny, as they would be picking sides in the face of medical nuances. He told Chase Strangio, the lawyer representing the Tennessee children and the first openly transgender person to argue at the Supreme Court, that trans healthcare is an area where we are extraordinarily bereft of expertise. The most neutral sounding jurist during the hearing was Justice Barrett. She inquired about several alternative pathways should the plaintiffs fail, as they seem destined to do in Skermeti. Parental rights to control their children's medical care, she noted, is a possible approach for a future challenge. Now, as I say, I don't think that would work when you're talking about an experimental medical treatment that increasing amounts of evidence are arguing against. Okay, so here, this one was from Matt Walsh. That came out in the wrong order. Okay, yes. All right, so huge moment at SCOTUS. Alito pulled up page 195 of the Cass report, showing that child sex changes don't actually prevent self-deletion. ACLU attorney Chase Strangio admits in response that there's no evidence that these procedures actually reduce suicides. All right, so let's pull up the video.
195 of the Cass report, it says, there is no evidence that gender affirmative treatments reduce suicide.
What I think that is referring to is there is no evidence in the studies that this treatment reduces completed suicide. And the reason for that is completed suicide, thankfully and admittedly, is rare, and we're talking about a very small population of individuals with studies that don't necessarily have completed suicides within them. However, there are multiple studies, long-term longitudinal studies, that do show that there is a reduction in suicidality, which I think is a positive outcome to this treatment.
Yeah,
As I read the statute here, the case.
Yes, this is so Strangio from the beginning was arguing vociferously that there is evidence that this reduces risk of self-deletion, which is not true. And then goes on to say that there's a lot of, well, okay, then moves the goalpost. Okay, well, there's no evidence of that, but the thoughts of it. Well, here, as I mentioned earlier, this article came out about a month ago. What is that? October 24th. U.S. study on puberty blockers goes unpublished because of politics, doctor says. This is the one who's getting sued now. The leader of the long-running study, and this, remember, this is somebody who's not trying to disprove the efficacy. This is somebody who specializes in these treatments. The leader of the long-running study said that the drugs did not improve mental health in children with gender distress, and that the finding might be weaponized by opponents of the care. So you've got, I covered this on Jimmy's show. So you've got the bizarre formulation. The study shows that these treatments don't work, and I won't publish the study because people might stop doing the treatments in response, which is pretty insane. Okay, so Ketanji Brown Jackson really covers herself in glory here. She compares this to the bans on interracial marriage that the court struck down.
As I read the statute here, the case here, the court starts off by saying that Virginia is now one of 16 states which prohibit and punish marriages on the basis of racial classifications. And when you look at the structure of that law, it looks in terms of, you can't do something that is inconsistent with your own characteristics. It's sort of the same thing. So it's interesting to me that we now have this different argument, and I wonder whether Virginia could have gotten away with what they did here by just making a classification argument the way that Tennessee is in this case.
Yes, I think that's exactly right, that there is absolutely a parallel between any law that says you can't act inconsistent with a protected characteristic and
yeah, okay. that's a good example of what I'm talking about, that the three so-called liberal justices basically acted as attorneys for the plaintiffs. That is just an insane. She's giving her an argument and asking her to run with that. Obviously, it is insane to compare, hey, maybe we shouldn't be doing medical experiments on kids that have very weak evidence to support it, especially in light of possible lifelong complications as a result, and not allowing people of different races to marry. That is just absolutely batshit. I guess that's what you would expect from somebody who refused to answer the "what is a woman" question in her confirmation hearings, but she really did not cover herself in glory there. Anything, Keaton?
Nope, good.
All right, so here is where you could see that Alito came ready to play. He gets into the various studies here that have shown that these treatments, in fact, really don't have any evidence to support them, in spite of the fact that the attorneys repeatedly, as you'll always get with trans activists, claim there's overwhelming evidence to support it.
Can I ask you a question about the state of medical evidence at the present time? In your petition, you made a sweeping statement, which I will quote: "Overwhelming evidence establishes that the appropriate gender-affirming treatment with puberty blockers and hormones directly and substantially improves the physical, psychological well-being of transgender adolescents with gender dysphoria." That was in November 2023. Now, even before then, the Swedish National Board of Health and Welfare wrote the following: they currently assess, quote, that the risks of puberty blockers and gender-affirming treatment are likely to outweigh the expected benefits of these treatments, which is directly contrary to the sweeping statement in your petition. After the filing of your petition, of course, we saw the release of the CAS report in the United Kingdom, which found a complete lack of high-quality evidence showing that the benefits of the treatments in question here outweigh the risks. And so I wonder if you would like to stand by the statement that you made in your petition, or if you think it would now be appropriate to modify that and withdraw the statement that there is overwhelming evidence establishing that these treatments have benefits that greatly outweigh the risks and the dangers.
I, of course, acknowledge, Justice Alito, that there is a lot of debate happening here and abroad about the proper model of delivery of this care and exactly when adolescents should receive it and how to identify the adolescents for whom it would be helpful.
And then she just goes on to bullshit her way through it. But good on him. He did the research. He came prepared. All right, so now finally, the Solicitor General argues fairly, in my opinion, that, how many children are we going to mutilate before we put a stop to doing experimental medicine on kids? Sotomayor literally compares doing these treatments to the risks of taking aspirin.
Eliminate the risk of detransitioners. So it becomes a pure exercise of weighing benefits versus risk. And the question of how many minors have to have their bodies irreparably harmed for unproven benefits is one that is best left.
I'm sorry, Counselor. Every medical treatment has a risk. Even taking aspirin. There is always going to be a percentage of the population under any medical treatment that's going to suffer a harm. So the question in my mind is not, do policymakers decide whether one person's life is more valuable than the millions of others who get relief from this treatment? The question is, can you stop one sex from the other?
Okay. All right. So perhaps fittingly, a little bit of a footnote. No sooner did this case have its oral arguments that within a day or two of that, woman sues California doctors, says she was rushed at age 12 into gender transition she regrets, and the doctor she's suing is the same one that repressed the study from the previous article. I have said for as long as we've been covering this, this is how this is all going to end. It's going to end in lawsuits, not only at the Supreme Court. That decision is not going to extend beyond state by state. This is going to stop nationally because doctors are not going to be willing to take the risk. They're not even going to be able to get insured for it. You're going to wind up having doctors, hospitals get wiped out by these lawsuits when they start to come in force. That's what's really going to put an end to it. And fortunately, I would say sooner rather than later.
All right. Very well. All right. So we had a few big segments tonight. Excuse me. We got one more to do, and then we're going to go over to Rumble for our final piece, and then we are going to do the Q&A. So, but right now, actually, I should have just done that. Sorry, we're without Jake tonight, which is a little tough for a Sunday night, but that's all right. He earned it. Kid works hard. Good kid. All right, so here we are. Folks, if you would like to help support this program, you can do so by becoming a member at Patreon, Substack, or Locals. We are really pushing the Locals pretty hard now. DoDissidents.locals.com. If you are watching on YouTube, that's the link. If you're watching on Rumble, there's a big bright red join button underneath the video player. You can click that and join our Locals for as little as $5 per month. Perks include your name up in lights here on the show credits. You also get call-in access to our post-show Q&As every Sunday night. Hey, today's Sunday. We're going to do a Q&A after the show. All are welcome to watch that over on Rumble. Paid members are welcome to call in and join the show. We also do movie club nights. We also do special interactive call-in live streams, access to special live events, all for just $5, plus the good karma that comes with supporting independent media. Your membership is what guarantees this show can keep going. We could not do it without you guys. You guys are the backbone of the program, and we thank you all very, very much for your support. We are also starting our fundraising effort. So we do have a Give, Send, Go. GiveSendGo.com. Where is it? Where did Jake put this? See, Jake knows where all this is. Here it is. GiveSendGo.com/Do Dissidents. We were trying to fly out to Seattle for the Worker Strike Back Conference in February, and we're also funding an arts festival in the spring, and we are out of special projects funds, so we need your help
out of money
to make that happen.
There are like things I would cover that I'm turning down because we don't have money.
Now we are depleted in the special projects funds. So if you would like to help boost that, go to GiveSendGo.com/Do Dissidents and help us make that happen. We got a bunch of projects that we want to fund in the new year. We have a documentary film that we're thinking about making. We'll reveal details as we get closer to that decision point, but we are reliant on your support to make that happen here. So GiveSendGo.com/Do Dissidents if you would like to chip in. All righty. Let's go over here.
You got the meme of the week?
Yep. Go ahead.
Where is it? All right. So we're going to bring back, this is part of our meeting the other day. We're going to try to put something a little special in each of our shows, Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. So Sunday usually ends up being so complicated anyway. We do a lot of big pieces. So we want what we do on Sunday simple. So we're bringing back the meme of the week. Now, there were lots and lots and lots of memes about the CEO. We'll show one of them on the other side. Many of them we can't show without risking our channel. So I went for something else, which you could argue is kind of related.
Right.
This is a very, very clever meme, and it's true. The slow but very real progression into fascism as charted by the evolution of the Lego police officer. And look at this. Yeah, the first one, friendly cop, looks like the kind of put you in a drunk tank.
Right.
You don't have to worry that he's gonna anally rape you with a plunger or anything. Then you got the next one. It's get a little more serious. He's got the riot gear, but he's got the aviators, but he's still smiling. And the next one, he's still smiling, but it looks a little sinister now, right? And he's got the mirrored shades. He's got the cool hand Luke mirrored shades there. Starting to get a little menacing. And then the last one, the mask is off. He's got the riot gear, and he is ready to fuck you up. So, yeah, like, hey, it's a minor thing, but very often that is where you can really see how a culture thinks about itself. The fact that the way that the Lego cop is portrayed went from like the friendly town cop to the guy who's going to come in with a military surplus tank and blow you away. Yeah, it does say something about what people are accepting as normal.
Yeah, no, he looks angry. He looks angry, the fourth guy. Yeah.
He's coming for you.
Yeah, coming for you. Doing something wrong.
Yep.
Absolutely. All right, Siddhartha Vicious. Sorry, El Casador. If Hawk Tuah girl was smart, she would do a line of sex toys. Need to connect with Rabbi Shmuley and get Rappaport to sell it at Diddy parties. There you go. Thank you. Yes, that would be good. That's good. Good marketing mind. Yes. Pray for Malula, the last city in Syria speaking Aramaic, the language of Jesus. Zionists destroying ancient Christian sites and their people. Horrific. Yeah, that's the thing. Isn't Damascus like one of the oldest cities in the world? And now they're just blowing it away. Yeah, real fucking pieces of it. John M. in Minnesota. Surely you saw the CNN interview of the HTS spokesperson. Apparently, with the name change from Al Nusra, they have embraced diversity. I have seen that. Like I said, we had an hour's worth of Syria coverage tonight. Without that, we will probably get to that some point this week. That's we certainly have more to say about that. But yes, I did see that. Thank you, John. Appreciate that. Victor Shakapopoulos. Russia getting caught with their pants down like that and probably losing their only base in the Mediterranean after decades is a geopolitical disaster. Hard to see a pathway for stopping the empire. Thank you, Victor. Appreciate that. Okay. We'll go to YouTube here. Despite Gaza, Ukraine happening, this is disgusting in a special way. U.S. government installing ISIS guys that are declared enemies of America. Revolting. Well, it just goes to show you. I mean, look, we funded bin Laden against the Soviets, right? So it's nothing new. But I mean, yeah. I mean, we have more smoke. We have more smoke for people who haven't attacked us than we do for people who have. Allegedly.
It would be really funny for one of the movie nights. Rambo 2.
Yeah, there you go. That'd be fun.
Right? Because that's the whole he's working with basically Al Qaeda to fight the Russians in Afghanistan.
Yep. Deposing a president is how you win a war, Russ says DC. Sparky, thanks for the $10. The rebels who just took over Syria were backed by Israel and the U.S. They used to be called Al Qaeda, same group who flew planes into the World Trade Center, September 2001. Exactly. That's what we're saying. Absolutely right. David Santucci, how are they going to finesse the fact that Syria is now ruled by a designated T blank group? Oh, did YouTube nail you for that censorship there? They don't have to finesse it. I mean, they've been saying this forever. I mean, we've been backing them against Assad, like I said, for the last 13 years. So is Israel. Like, they don't have to finesse it. It's amazing. It really is amazing. Not just any T group, but AQ of 911 fame. Thank you, David. Eric Morrison.
I stand corrected. That's Rambo 3.
Oh, it was
two. He goes back to Vietnam, right?
Oh, okay. All right. I never saw any of the sequels actually. But I knew that was one of the plots of one of them.
I saw the last one out of morbid curiosity, like the one they did in the last few years.
Right.
It was pretty dark. It was surprisingly dark.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Eric Morrison, thanks for the $5. Just finished Chomsky's most recent book, likely last, The Myth of American Idealism. Could not be more timely. Thank you, Eric. I didn't know he had a new book out. He has a new book out? That's crazy. Sparky, Syria was the birthplace of Christianity. Assad protected Christians in Syria. Now it's likely there'll be no more Christians in Syria. What does your boy Mike Huckabee feel about that? Yeah, exactly. We'll see. That's a good point, Sparky. But they hate us for our freedom. That's right. Thank you, Sparky. David Santucci says, remember all the beheading videos. These are the same guys. Yep. It's really sick stuff. Posmo, thanks for the $5. Trump said he wouldn't go to war with Iran a few weeks ago. Russ, look it up. Time Magazine, and he said this whole time in office search it. Yeah, the problem is Israel seems to want it, and he seems to be willing to go along with what they want. And so it doesn't look good to me. Doesn't look good to me. I mean, if we'll back them, seems like you're going to be backing that war with Iran by extension. So it seems. I mean, they're making up bullshit about how they're trying to whack them, right? That was the thing in the campaign. I mean, they seem to have a pretty big hard on for them. Where do you think Israel-Palestine will be in 5 years? That's maximums. Ross, you've talked about that.
Where Israel-Palestine will be in 10 years?
5 years, yeah.
5 years? I think Israel's going to collapse because this is a population that is not going to accept the deprivations of living in a failed state. They are not going to accept that. The Israeli population is largely made up of educated professionals. Anyone who can leave, it's already happening. People who can leave are starting to get out. People are Israelis are pulling their retirement money out of Israeli funds. They're not going to, this is what I mean. Yeah, they may win the battles. They're going to end up losing the war of having a functioning state. Who's going to want to be there? You're going to be a pariah around the world. You're going to want that for your kids. Being Israeli is going to be a mark of Cain. It already is. You're seeing more and more incidents where they're getting harassed when they go on vacation, the hotels they go to. It's a state that is committed a genocide that it will take no responsibility for. Even if all of this settles down and they have their greater Israel, at what cost? You have a port that's already gone bankrupt. You have, 40% of their businesses have closed since the start of the war. There's a worldwide boycott movement going on that I think is only gaining force. Who's gonna want to buy anything from Israel going forward? Who's gonna want to do business with them? I think Israel, as the apartheid state that it is, I don't think it's sustainable. I think things might look bad now, especially with the fall of Syria, but look at the big picture. It doesn't look good for them.
Michael Castillo says, will you please have Matt Ho on your show, on your wonderful show? We've had Matt Ho on a few times, actually. We love Matt Ho. Matt Ho's a great guy, and he's in he went to where is he now? I don't know. I think he's in Israel, but he's been taking pictures of Gaza from Israel. He volunteered with the Freedom Flotilla. No, he's a wonderful guy. We like Matt a lot, and he's a great guest. So yeah, we'd love to have him back on soon. Jax Page, thanks for the $5. There's no fucking way a 1.5-year-old said they're trans. I'm a parent and I call BS. I support trans people, but not body altering decisions.
We have never said anything about grown ass adults making their own decisions about that. That's not what it's about.
Right. Psychiatry doesn't diagnose anything. It uses no biometric tests. That's where the absurdity of diagnosing children with gender dysphoria begins. Thank you, Marky Mark. Black Spock Wharf, thanks for the $5. And whom among the corruption medical corporations are to monitor supplements? Well, I mean, you have an FDA, right? You're talking about now the FDA is corrupt in and of itself, but you do have certain bodies that regulate things to make sure that what you're selling is what you say it is. Like, that's how unregulated these supplements are. They're under no obligation to put the thing in the supplement that they say is in the supplement. They could literally sell you powdered milk in a capsule and call it whatever the fuck they want. I mean, that sounds crazy, but that's true. They can literally put whatever they want in there.
Yeah. No, I had to stop working out for a while. I put on weight. When I started working out again, I took joint supplements. I had to do a lot of research.
Yeah, you have to find ones that are real.
What's not going to be like, lead and crab dicks.
Right, exactly, yeah. Michael Castillo, thanks for the $50. Let's have another sound drop for Michael Castillo. I'll hit this one here.
Blasphemy against you. Who the hell are you? Are you Jesus Christ?
What if someone poured bubbling hot jelly on Mark Smucker knowing we are being poisoned? Thank you, Michael Castillo. Thank you for that. Very much appreciate that, my friend. Thank you for your generosity tonight. All right, we'll read the rest of our YouTube chats and Rumble rants after this final YouTube segment. I know it's a long show tonight. We promised you a big show, and a big show we have. All right. Final segment. This one isn't too long, folks. Bill Clinton sat down with Andrew Ross Sorkin. Eric Abenante says an emotional Bill Clinton describing Yasser Arafat rejecting a Palestinian state. I think what's happened there is one of the great tragedies of the 21st century. I tell them what Arafat walked away from. Bill negotiated with both sides, but one side was non-negotiable. I think this Eric Abenante conservative account. Notice they hate the Democrats until the Democrats, suck up to the Zionists.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm
then
wrong,
we're all
Eric,
on the same team.
but then they're all on the same team. Yeah, exactly. So here is this line of garbage from Bill Clinton at a New York Times event. Apparently, he has a new book out. The memoir of sorts. I forget what it's called. Actually, no, I remember what it's called now, but I won't say it because I don't want to plug the book. I don't want to have anything to do with any kind of promotion of his book. But here it is.
What's happened there in the last 25 years is one of the great tragedies of the 21st century. And when I tell the young people, for example, who are understandably in America, let's say they're super sympathetic with the Palestinians. Well, they've been killed. A lot of those Palestinians have, and all they know is that a lot more Palestinians have been killed than Israelis.
Yeah, that's all they know. Bear in mind, this is the guy who they sent to the swing states in advance of the November vote. To browbeat people about how they're not supporting genocide sufficiently. Keep going.
And I tell them what Arafat walked away from. And they can't believe it. I said, oh yeah, he walked away from a Palestinian state with a capital in East Jerusalem, 96% of the West Bank, 4% of Israel, to make up for the 4% that the settlers occupy that were beyond the borders in the 67 or more. And I go through all the stuff that was in the deal, and they it's not on their radar screen. They can't even imagine that happened. And I tell them, the first and most famous victim of an attempt to give the Palestinians a state was Prime Minister Rabin, whom I think loved as much as I ever loved another man. And so Rabin, he dies.
He dies.
Then.
So Rabin was assassinated by the very kind of right-wing extremist that runs Israel now. That's the thing he doesn't tell you there, right? The political faction, if you will, of Israel that killed Rabin is the ideological brethren of Netanyahu.
Shimon Peres is defeated in the election, and where the rest of it is history. But you walk away from these once-in-a-lifetime peace opportunities, and you can't complain 25 years later when the doors weren't all still open and all the possibilities weren't still there. You can't do it. It's just...
Your voice just cracked when you said that.
Yeah. I'm an old guy. I have my regrets. That's one of them.
Oh, well, that's nice. It's nice that you take a little bit of responsibility for that, because it sure sounded like you're putting all the responsibility on Arafat and all of the subsequent responsibility on the Palestinian people for the fact that the far right came to power in Israel. That's why I made a point to mention that the faction that killed Rabin is the right-wing extremist faction that runs it now, because not only does Bill Clinton leave that out, but implicit in the way he frames all of this is that it was the Palestinians' refusal to cooperate that paved the way for an ascendant far right in Israel. In other words, you guys had a chance to essentially make official your own subjugation by signing a deal at Camp David, which, by the way, Israel rejected Palestinian terms as well. It wasn't just
right.
Israelis made offers in Palestine.
And also, it's not what he's making out.
Yeah. But one more thing.
Ilan Pappé gets into this quite a bit in that book.
Is that the Palestinians turned down a reasonable peace offer, and that is what empowered a far right in Israel that is now genociding them. And then, go ahead. Sorry, I just wanted to finish that.
No, he gets into this quite a lot in this book, and it's not what Bill Clinton's making out. They were going to continue to have these Israeli settlements in the West Bank, and you were talking about this Swiss cheese kind of combination of Israeli settlements and Palestinian settlements without actually having this contiguous Palestinian state. Like, you get the impression from what he's saying, oh yeah, they were going to have a state. No. It was good.
Israel would still control the resources and the infrastructure.
They were still, not only that, they were not going to be allowed to have their own diplomatic services. They weren't going to be allowed to have their own military. And it wasn't even going to go into effect immediately. They were going to have to live with the occupation for years without any violence as a condition. And then you would start to enact this completely unsatisfactory scheme after that. It was like 5 years. There would have to be no attacks or anything to show that you can control that. So basically, yeah, you got to be good in this prison, and then maybe you get some better food.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, in Clinton's mind, as he would have you understand, it was the breakdown of those talks, which was the fault of Arafat, that then led to the Second Intifada, which then led to this ascendant right. In other words, it all comes down to the fact that the Palestinians refused to reason. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So here's some commentary on this. Aaron Mate, Bill has been telling this lie for 20 plus years for the sole purpose of justifying Israeli aggression, occupation, and whitewashing his role in perpetuating it. Israeli Foreign Minister Shlomo Ben-Ami, who made the offer that Bill complains Arafat walked away from, has said that if I were a Palestinian, I would have rejected Camp David as well. That's because, among other things, Israel would have its major West Bank settlement blocks without offering Palestinians an equal land swap. Now, I believe Arafat proposed a one-to-one land swap, which Israel rejected. Is that right? You're probably more brushed up on the specifics of that, but I believe that Arafat proposed that and it was turned down. Pretty sure I have that right. It was Israel that walked away from a major Palestinian compromise, accepting just 22% of the land that Israel stole from them. Here's how Clinton official Robert Malley put it. Israel rejected the unprecedented two-state solution put to them by the Palestinians from Camp David onward, including the following provisions. A state of Israel incorporating some land captured in 1967 and including a very large majority of its settlers, the largest Jewish Jerusalem in the city's history. Preservation of Israel's demographic balance between Jews and Arabs, security guaranteed by a U.S.-led international presence. Matt Duss, who was Bernie Sanders' foreign policy advisor, this simplistic, misleading account of Camp David 2000 has been challenged by multiple participants, Israelis, Palestinians, and Americans, but it's done a huge amount of work to help liberals feel okay about the constant violence against Palestinians.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. And that is the purpose of it. And was that Ari Melber interviewing him?
That was Andrew Ross Sorkin. Looks like a younger Ari Melber. Yeah.
He looks like him. Bill Clinton's voice is always cracking. Right. Like that's his job. He's a propagandist. He created a moment.
Right.
There was no moment there. Bill Clinton wasn't getting choked up. He's talked like this forever. That's what his voice sounds like. What do you mean your voice cracked? His voice cracks by that's his voice.
Exactly.
And then Bill, of course, played into it. Yeah, I have my regrets.
Right. They can't believe it because it's a self-serving lie from an incredibly sleazy, dishonest politician, says Jeet here, who, as his remarks about Judea and Samaria shows, is committed to greater Israel subjection of the Palestinians. Hell hath no fury like a Clinton denied his Nobel Peace Prize, says Khaled El-Gindi. This is probably the single most debunked narrative in diplomatic history. Obviously, Bill Clinton lies about everything, says John Schwartz, but he probably lies the most about Israel-Palestine. It was Israel that walked away from the 2000 negotiations, not Arafat. Yitzhak Rabin never, ever wanted a Palestinian state. He said so. And so, there's some question here. This is an article that came out in 2012. Rabin formally opposed a Palestinian state more than a year after White House handshake letter from 1994 shows. So these were the Oslo Accords. Here's the famous photo here of them shaking hands in front of the White House, Arafat and Rabin. More than a year after his hesitant handshake on the White House lawn with PLO leader Yasser Arafat in September 1993, Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin remained formally opposed to a Palestinian state, a December 1994 letter signed by his top aide makes plain. The brief missive dated December 25th, Christmas, wow, something to write on Christmas, 1994, and made available to the Times of Israel on Monday, states, concerning your letter to the Prime Minister with regard to a Palestinian state, I am replying, the Prime Minister is of the opinion that there is no room for a Palestinian state. The letter, signed by Rabin's advisor and bureau chief Eitan Haber, was sent to a private citizen, Shmuel Fisher, who says he inquired about the government's intention regarding a Palestinian state in the aftermath of Rabin's signing of the Oslo Accords in 1993. Fisher also received in 94 a letter from Yuri Savir, a former aide to then Foreign Minister Shimon Peres, in which Savir states that it was the current government's policy to reject the creation of a Palestinian state. According to the Accord's first article, their primary aim was to establish a Palestinian interim self-government authority for the Palestinian people in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip for a transitional period not exceeding 5 years, leading to a permanent settlement. The Oslo Accords do not mention Palestinian statehood, and Rabin himself, while ceaselessly speaking of the need for a historic peace agreement with Palestinians, did not publicly call for a Palestinian state. While he couldn't say with certitude whether Rabin truly believed in the creation of a Palestinian state, Haber said at one point Monday that he was sure that Rabin was ready to agree to such a state toward the end of the 5-year interim period. Confusingly, Haber added, however, it's possible that he would have agreed, or maybe not. They assassinated him because of things like that. So I can't know. Perhaps you should ask the assassin. Well, that's the thing. Yes, Rabin, who together with Peres and Yasser Arafat received the 94 Nobel Peace Prize, was assassinated by right-wing extremist Yigal Amir on November 4th, 1995, at the end of a peace rally in Tel Aviv. Haber made the government's official announcement of Rabin's death that night. Okay, so details there, whether he was open to Palestinian statehood, very much an open question at best. But even if he was, even if you are most charitable to his point of view, you got to think that's why he was shot. Right. And who was he shot by? He was shot by, again,
the perception
I hate to say it
that he
over
was
and over
for
again.
it was enough
he
to
was
get
shot
him
for
shot.
the perception that he was too soft on them. Exactly. By the kinds of people who are running Israel now. And what Bill Clinton wants you to believe, well, first of all, he wants you to kind of forget that detail. That's why he said Rabin died. Right. He didn't say he was assassinated by a right-wing extremist. He said he died. He wants you to forget about that. And to the extent he wants you to know about that, he wants you to blame Arafat for that. He wants you to blame the breakdown of the Camp David talks on the Palestinians and subsequently blame them for everything that's happened since, because it was their refusal to negotiate and essentially formalize their own domination at the hands of the Zionists that led to this.
And no, I can remember the propaganda at the time because everybody thought, because the media was really playing it up, Bill Clinton with his good old boy charms, what a great American story that would be, right? This kind of trailer park trash president, go out there and convince the people in the Middle East to be friends, and what a great kind of Pax Americana capstone to the Clinton era that would have been, and that's very much how it was being played up. And as it began to fall apart and the Second Intifada started, it was all framed as Arafat was given latitude by the Israelis, and then he didn't know how to properly govern, those brown people. And so he had to direct all that rage away from himself at the Israelis. And this is why so many people who get their news that way think that the problem is entirely with the leadership of the Palestinians, because that's how they always have framed these issues. This didn't start after October 7th. The American public has been propagandized with this framing for decades.
Exactly. Sir Bikes a Lot Day, thanks for the $10. It's been over 20 years since Alex Jones warned us about the chemicals in the water turning the frogs gay. Too bad they didn't allow regulations to stop that pollution because communism. Thank you for that. Peter version 1, thanks for the $4.99. Just remember, the biggest goal of the WEF Illuminati is to depopulate. If they make everyone trans, no more populating except the powerful. Yeah, I mean, the problem with that theory is kind of hard to depopulate the Earth 0.006% at a time. And also, the countries with the largest populations don't really, this isn't as normalized. And so, I mean, I agree with what Caleb Maupin said about that. He thinks it's more an effort to de-radicalize the left. If there is a political goal, it's to get the left to center these kinds of issues so that they don't center issues like the ones that have been centered in the last week or so. And oddly enough, it is the left inadvertently, I don't think they're consciously doing this, but they're doing the bidding of a for-profit healthcare system, by making it very easy to permanently medicalize kids. And, I've told this story in the past. I have a cousin who's a trans influencer out in LA. And the first time I met her, she was born a boy. First time I met her, she was probably 4 years old. I was like 7 or something. I'm a few years older than her. She looked like a girl. She talked like a girl. I thought she was a girl. When I first saw her, I literally thought, this is a girl. This is not a boy. And when I found out she was a boy, I was like, that's weird. Like, it wasn't just like she was like an effeminate boy. No, like this, it was like a girl. Like, I could, like, what?
Yeah, it exists.
Yeah, so it exists. The question is, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm not saying that's not valid. That's not a valid experience to go through. And I think people should be supported through that. But I think the valid question is it more rare than it's currently being diagnosed as?
Right.
Because of
an
opportunistic medical industry. And then if you have influencers, really promoting it, does there get to be an element of a social contagion where people think that's what they have when they don't?
Well, see, that's what I would say about your cousin. At the time that your cousin would have been going through that, I wouldn't have even questioned that.
But she was a happy boy. It wasn't like she was like sad. It wasn't like she was like tormented.
Yeah, but
not
there
that
was.
I didn't know her well. But I'm just saying, like, at the time, even though she was a child,
the identity,
it was pretty obvious.
I wouldn't have questioned it because there was no social encouragement towards that.
Right.
There was no possibility of social contagion. That's why when, as they did in court, they were arguing detransition is very rare. I'm sure it is very rare in the population that transitioned in Buck's day. In the population that transitioned before it got trendy.
Right.
Talk to me in 10 years.
Right. That's the thing. There's just a lot of uncertainty now because of all of these added elements. Right. So yeah, that's what I would say to that.
In terms of whether there's an overall project to depopulate that this is tied into, I'm open to it. I'm open to it because of other things. Because of the encouragement towards unhealthy diets, towards the attempt to stigmatize working out as right wing. Like, all of these things seem to add up to you want us dead. You want people unhealthy and dead. At the very least, you want them weak. And at worst, you want them to die. Like, why would you from the top down? And we know that they coordinate with the media when they want to put out a message. Why are you putting out all of these messages, or they were, until they got too much backlash for it, that you can be healthy at any size and, you can eat anything. It's you shouldn't shame people for living on cupcakes and donuts. Like, why would you put that out? So it seems to me there's a pattern there. Can I say for sure? No, am I open to it? If you could present me the right evidence, yes, I'm open to the idea.
Wasn't me. Thanks for the $30. That's very kind of you. Explain your success in terms of late stage capitalism. Capitalism is not a zero sum game. Either you work for yourself or you work for the collectivists. Come on, guys. But I like your show and thank you for it. Thank you. Thank you for the $30 donation. I would just ask, so who do you work for? Who do you work for? I mean, you work for yourself or you work for the collectivists. I mean,
man. Yeah.
You're right. You work for the man. I mean, we are an independent operation to an extent. We kick up to Google, right? Now we have an independent operation, but most people are wage earners. If you're a wage earner, you are not a capitalist. You work for the man.
Right.
Who do the people working for Amazon who sleep in their cars because they can't afford to pay rent on an Amazon warehouse worker's salary if they live in an expensive area like in New York City? Who do they work for? I mean, you can ask them that, right? Who's extracting their wealth? I don't think it necessarily matters. Well, actually, that's not true. I do think it matters who does it, but I think that same dynamic exists under capitalism too. I would argue nowadays, 2024, to a more severe extent than it would under an alternative system.
Well, I just invited the author, I don't know how to say his name, so I don't want to embarrass myself, of Techno-Feudalism on.
Yeah, good timing, because he really stepped in it on the Syria thing. He's getting piled on for his Syria
did he?
shit. Yeah.
What did he say?
He kind of both sides it
what
the
did
way
he
Mehdi
say?
did. He kind of did what Mehdi did, I think, as I understand. Yeah, it was really unfortunate.
That really sucks. Well,
I was going to send it to you, but I'm like, I don't have the heart to tell him today. I'll tell him tomorrow.
That's not what I'm inviting him on to talk about.
We can still talk. Yeah, exactly. We just won't bring it up.
Yeah, we won't get into it. I'm not calling him for foreign policy.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I'm calling him for his theory that we're in a post-capitalist.
It's true. World. I was gonna tell you that tomorrow. I didn't have the heart to tell you today because I know you just reached out to him. Yeah, it's funny though. Funny timing. I tried to
that is ironic.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah, we bring him on. The chat's going crazy on him. We don't know why. We're like, what the hell's wrong? What's the matter? Everybody's trashing him in the chat. We have no idea why.
It did come up on my ex. I started following him. I wasn't following him. I didn't see that.
Yeah, that got around. Michael Castillo, thanks for the $5. I've tried to find the Larry King interview between Yitzhak Rabin and Yasser Arafat. That's not out there. You can't find that somewhere. That's interesting. John in Minnesota, hard to believe there hasn't been mention of Turkey. These rebels come from areas controlled by Turkey. Nobody directly benefits more than Erdogan for now anyway. No, that's true. And it came up in a couple of the articles. Yeah, like I said, I mean, there were 20 angles from which we could have covered that. We picked 4 that's seemed most immediate and interesting. But we will get into it more for sure.
Varoufakis, is that how you say it?
Varoufakis, yeah, that's it. DD, love what you do. Thank you, Junk Dude. Russell, where can I get your Justice League t-shirt?
We're gonna talk to them, man. We mentioned it to them. Like I'm surprised they haven't capitalized on this because Sabby has the poster behind her on our show. A lot of people would buy it if they made it available.
Nina can't. Off subject. My son won Spelling Bee Saturday. Moved to next round. Oh, congratulations. Huzzah, Nina. Thank you so much for that.
Nice.
Burrows Queen says, I've got the actual Warren Commission in hardback. If it wasn't the middle of the night when I call in sometimes, I didn't look like shit. I'd switch video on to compete with your books. There you go. That'd be fun, Burrows Queen. Thank you very much. Okay. Benaside Shapiro says, I am the owl, clutched his pearls last week and said healthcare companies are not even that profitable on 2 to 3% margins. United Health made $6 billion after tax, after expenses, net income in 2023. Well, that's a good time to switch over to the Rumble side. We've got one more segment on the healthcare CEO killing reactions, and then we're going to take your calls. So we are going to take a 5-minute break and then head over.
And as always, a fun intermission. I picked one of the many songs that have dropped on Instagram about the CEO slipped on a banana peel, along with a vintage trailer that fits the theme.
All right. Well, folks, we thank you very much. It is dudissidents.com/rumble. Head on over there if you'd like to continue the show. We've got one more fun segment for you, and then calls from our supporters, dudissidents.com/rumble. If you don't get Rumble where you are, you can find us at Twitch. Just go to twitch.tv and type in Do Dissidents, and we keep the stream live over there in case Rumble is an issue for you. But thank you guys very much for being here tonight. If we don't see you over there on the Rumble side, we'll see you Tuesday, 2 p.m. Eastern. But come on over, hang out a little bit more with us this evening. It's going to be a fun one, make it worth your while. And then this clip will drop on YouTube. We're just recording it live on Rumble in case we get carried away, which tends to happen from time to time. So just in case.
Especially on certain subjects.
Especially on this one. Yeah. We weren't as well behaved as we intended to be last time. So we will try and clean up our act this time. But should be fun. Thanks, guys. We'll see you in 5 minutes. Until whenever we see you again, be safe and be well.
Courage.
Please clap.